요래 So we'll read the preliminary prayers before the teachings on page 229. In the prayer book, page 229. So yeah, there's a praise to Shakyamuni Buddha and the individuals. Guru, teacher of Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans. To you, Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Guru, teacher of Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans. To you, Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Guru, teacher of Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans. To you, Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When supreme amongst humans you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, form supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, savior, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the teacher having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean. To you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the low realms, the one path of sublime pure reality, to the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, or devoted to the moral precepts, to you the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit any unwholesome actions. Engage in perfect wholesome actions. Subdue one's own mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a defective view, a butter lamp flame, an illusion, a dewdrop, a water bubble, a dream, lightning, a cloud. See all causative phenomena like this. By these merits may transmigratory beings attain the state of all-seeing, subdue the enemy of faults, and be freed from the ocean of samsara, disturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. The indescribable, inconceivable, and inexpressible perfection of wisdom, unproduced, unceasing, the nature of space, object of the uniquely knowing transcendental wisdom, to the mother of the victorious ones of the 3 times I prostrate. I prostrate to the 3 noble rare sublimes. Thus did I hear at one time that Bhagavan was dwelling on Master Vulture's mountain in Vajgriya, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those 5 aggregates as also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness. without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomena. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awakened to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment and reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as true, since it is not false. The mantra of perfection of wisdom is declared. I am Agate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhisattva. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan rose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you indicated, even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharavari-putra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. I and all surrounding sentient beings take refuge in the Buddha, take refuge in the Dharma, take refuge in the Sangha. We prostrate to the great mother Prajnaparamita, surrounded by her children, the assemblies of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions. In dependence on my prostrations to all of you, may these words of truth be actualized. In the past, the Deva King Indra dispelled the evil Maras by reflecting on the profound meaning of the wisdom gone beyond and reciting the profound words in daily recitation. In that same way, I also reflect on the profound meaning of the Great Mother Prajnaparamita and recite the profound words in daily recitation. And dependent upon that, may all diseases, spirit possessions, bad conditions, and opposing forces, which happen due to past karma and immediate conditions, be dispelled. May they become non-existent. May they be passed away. From the holy supreme realm of Kachara, you who possess power of clairvoyance and magical emanation, look after practitioners like a mother looks after her children, to the host of dakinis of the 3 abodes that are destroyed. So, by the teachings of the 3 noble rare sublime ones possessing the power of truth, may hindrances be averted, be unlimited, possible. May all enemies and negative forces opposed to Brahma shunned and so. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May it be free from the harmful conditions to Dharma. May all excellences be in accord with the Dharma. And may there be auspiciousness and perfect happiness here right now. Then we'll skip to 240 and do the short mandala offering to them. Sangye chodam soje chodam Zopa dani katsuji Nage chuje jebe sonamji Lola penche sangye sho Sangye chodam soje chodam Zopa dani katsuji Nage chuje jebe sonamji Lola penche sangye sho Sangye chodam soje chodam Janja Bagi Nandi Kansuchi, Nagi Chunagi Batsanaki, Yola Pension Sangye Guru.
yang ka jigi machinba yu sikir. Mi seba dina ina sangye yu chus na kante chila kukuris. Sila diga la ama kuba sikirwa. Chila di dinga la nangchun ku chusu la shi desi chi. Che na jisu.
So today I've been invited here to explain the foundation of all good qualities, which is on page 249 in the prayer book, on page 249. But before that, I thought to explain a little bit about what, in general, what is Buddha Dharma. Most of you probably have already heard some explanation and understand that, but in case there's some of you who might not be clear about that, I thought to clarify exactly what is the Buddha Dharma. So in that way, give a short introduction.
Jidang chu se di ku talang chi cha di tau shi chi tau cha di go re nga rang su da mi zhuo zang mang se da mi zhuo cha di ngue la chi jie na su jia xin da di su zhe di rinpo xin da cha ba re si xin le de duo da ting du yi ci ri bei xie su jie wei na jiang cu ni chu ni ya su jia rinpe cha xi ni nyang lo su wa dang ting zhe yi bei su jia rinpe cha ni nya di ya rinpe nang lo pu ni di de nang lo pu ni yi xia xi wu di de rinpe cha xi 강들 소자를 신의 차네 디네르베 미도 미시 좀 시고래 또 디네 인디가라 소자 통화 차반에 손디 다 수수수기 뉴발라 바비 응에시야다 대어주 루야기 터시디 제어 단다버도 제어를 맞추
So in general, when you say Buddha Dharma, then Dharma has the meaning of method. I mean, like a method to progress along a path. So in general, now we're human beings. but in the course of evolution, began as sort of microscopic life in the oceans, and then gradually became creatures living on the land, and then more and more sophisticated until now we have human beings on the earth. But in all those different forms of life, they have in common that they strive to be free from different forms of suffering and strive to have sort of happiness and well-being.
하버도 미리차시시네 동네시아나 디오도에기 터시디 소샤 신뢰장 터시 사와당 터시 자치워 아니 미낭주디 소샤 신뢰 치워의 파버지유디가나 딜러 땡지지네 디오도야의 동네시아기 타랑 신뢰 지체의 파버스는데 제지 정말 오래했다 민주가 차원에 숨이 단대봐도
So from the time that humans first arose until now, then compared to other life forms, humans have like much more deep and vast and profound, well, much more profound and much more like vast and varied means to achieve freedom from suffering and to achieve happiness and well-being. So mainly because of human beings have more intelligence, because of human beings' greater intelligence, then they have many more different methods to try to achieve happiness and try to be free from suffering.
아주 미시디 레버디 현대 민다오 지역의 다디라 대비 루주디는 망부 시투고래 대비다 루주 망부 냐야기 더시디래 깨라디니 이수지는 대비 루주 망부지 이토라 샤지시네 베미로 가수로 마음 쉬우진 루사네야 메르베 자니자 공기 루주티 수들이 이토니 시에유디 다나신기 단대 수수기 민된기 직강에 그 동리제다 인대자마세베 마음베 된다 상당히 마음보 부장신불라 비하기 된다양 단단히 상동에 된대기베 도주기 네가 메시지도 밀라
So another sort of uncommon ability humans have is because they have such great intelligence, then from, many generations back in the course of history, then humans, developed very sophisticated language and then also written language where you can write. And then because humans have writing, then they can write about history, Then humans write about their experience and what's happening. And so from many generations before, we know what has happened. And then also based on the same type of intelligence, we have the ability to think about what will happen in the future, and not just the near future, but the far future. And so kind of make plans for the future.
That is how the tragic to tragic in the net. tragic to the Chishini. Any holiday or the Arilan Saki or any video die or cut. But in this chasata. Tragic to the Slav would be that me in Nanju, but Ninchini, any Chuche Rida. That series Ribal Ladin and Chuche Rimambushi, which Tartine, that they button us to see or was.
So at this time, we've arrived at a point in human development where, again, independence upon human intelligence, even now we've created the internet, where you can communicate with people anywhere around. If you want to talk to someone in India, from India, if you want to talk to someone in the US, for example, you can just call them up and talk to them immediately, or even have a video call and see them. So independence upon technology, we developed all different kinds of machines and tools that we can do many kinds of different things. So this is again independence upon human intelligence. Then we've arrived at this state of kind of development in terms of human history.
There's chayordi that and debado, and there's chayordi, the Miri Chani and Tandebado Shazan also Shibuji Chayor, the Tashi Shibutan, Kaleshi Jayor. Kaleshi Jayordi, Nansu Tandebado, Oshi Mambuji, Zewa, Tana Mambuji, Zeshi, Dewa, 主要的东西是他们是不是这里是但是还来不及前比如说刚才教有的第一俺最当代巴鲁但头是起不第一哪个月为呢说头是大人给东西成了谁推的那你对我成了主推是穷月为呢但俺说他们谁我才我是看不到俺说对家他都得对我嘞没对不他都不得东西嘞现在暑假前年送的当代巴都每日前年当代巴都俺让去对我主要的东西写给讨论俺最每日你把他提出这了你呢俺最近对吧长了就主图月呢谈动俺说了谈动以内俺说每日了刚刚车的用没习惯的因为的刚刚车过的谈动以内刚刚忙不有的
So in looking at this, we can see that as from the time that in evolution, from the time that there were small animals and organisms, and then more sophisticated organisms, up until now we've reached this point in human development or evolution. Then we can see we've had the same fundamental desire to be free from suffering and have happiness from a long time ago until now. And we've used many different methods to try to achieve that, to try to be free from suffering and try to have happiness. And so we can look at all the different kind of methods, more and more sophisticated methods we've used in our development up until now. So if those methods have worked, then there shouldn't be, something else that we need, there shouldn't be something more that we need. We should just be able to use those methods to be able to accomplish this wish we have to be free from suffering and have happiness. But we can see that those methods haven't really worked. We still have difficulties now as human beings at this point in our development.
이 가르치어레스라 디간라 다 넘버 상제비 다주지 토네 대외인들이다 넘버 상제비 다주시를 샤네 가서도 대외이나 미리 차네 단대바도 게다 이기를 되네 지네 망부시우지 아니 지네 망부시우지 다 되는 것을 캄보디아야로 소바다 다나신이 나사주야로 소바다 아니 다나신베 진주리 travel rinjuigi 타는 근데 라수 시부지 배가서 된了퍼니 시부지 다 아주 쉬워다 아주 제요래 레디 다去的嘛这个图写文字的去路那么上这边去个图盘都是单元的讲了米暑假掐你说米日掐你说你当天把它休息接下有的提出场面一提出场面我主要的东西写给他们的看着了去前途是了的讲了西推荐也接当年的我主要东西写你16年东西定义给今年不提出这地方社会呢东西的这样西推荐忙不去周围呢的我平时出吧当电不起用途呀但这是一上水期西了下年的确心理主要当东年的修罗呢出这月位，但这些希腊下呢，他让你拿落了过了节呢，主月位是通，但的恰就是那么上节位，每日的节当呢都是单元的讲的。
So if we look at sort of this history of development from a Buddhist perspective, from the perspective of Buddhist philosophy, then it looks like all the different methods we've used through the course of evolution, and then as human beings we developed the ability to speak sophisticated language, and then writing, and then independence upon kind of more and more knowledge, then to build better houses, develop medicines, better foods, education, and so forth. Then it looks like the main methods we've tried to use to reduce suffering and have more and more happiness are focused on external development, on development of external facilities, external conditions that we have, and trying to reduce suffering in the same way by trying to eliminate external causes of suffering, external causes of harm to us. And that seems to be, the main method that we've used. So this is, again, looking from a Buddhist perspective, looking at sort of the history of human development and what sort of methods we've used to reduce suffering and to increase happiness is a focus on external things, increasing external conditions that will give more and more happiness and reducing external causes of harm and suffering.
现在第一地方呢，去的忙这吧，他把的那么上级被去当，忙这边人年现代的出这的，他带地方了，那么上级被带住个土地方都是带地方了，看到第二多年的修罗年用个月不起，修罗年出了我做了，这的月不起是吧？听这起，等。今天去上路去洗了下呢，俺去两个接的月吧，今天去掐的也是那么上级被打入洗了下的讲了，他电影的对么上级重点的去开始送过是呢，既当戏推进了电影，即开始的，超的话是那位那里，戏刚刚戏建议把了电影，即俺做了刚刚这样的。苏嘛的恰呀当，绿了那是这样了，说不定的用个月的用来有不的看里过的，的用个的是过是吧？的几当用来有的是，他那些戏推荐也不恰为那的了点呢，你推荐也不了点几几年，绿的话的绿了的呢，即超的一季吧，什么记不恰呀？的用来有嘛的写起了月嘛，哦，的了过嘛，他看了过是呢，俺最给是。ngaran sugi ndebe diwa tatu badi nga sugi diwa pe chasan shulo ni te yoba dang shigi tunjin ji do ne yuan yoba dang shigi tunjin kanshi do to ba yina nga sugi ndebe dije tatu badi yung to ya yoba sang dong ya di no ju shes da namba sang yoba da ju shi ba sha de da dunya di ji ba da 시기 강에 진게 진지 매버스니 시기 다우지 매버스 스네 나란수기 문제베 동에 타투바디 다 동에기 나로 동에 타투바 디네 손디 동에 때니 시워디 용그레세 근데 상당은 시기게 진 매버스 투바 수투마도 강시다로 수투비 왕당이야 디를 때니 디장을 때니 맞추 문제베 동에 타투바디 시에 동에 넘버 탄제도 매버차야디第永远没读，但第送读，但第送这个他们懂的了，搞的教育是那上节兄弟的，第二的读念给就做的修罗了要嘛的，叔叔当了有的，叔叔生个点都有的是，第二读念给就做的，读念给就做的叔叔生个，第二给就做的叔叔生个了有的是，第送读，这前面的是。
So again, if we look in a way that's from the perspective of Buddhist philosophy, but if we look, if we think in a way that's not particular to any religion or any religion in general, not Buddhist religion, then it's true that in order to have some physical well-being, comfort in body, be free from sickness, and other sufferings, we do need external conditions. Like independence upon good external conditions, then we do have some pleasant experience in the body, pleasant feelings in the body. And then in the independence upon, independence on that, we do have some happiness in the mind. And also independence upon being free from harmful external conditions, we can reduce some degree of suffering. That we have to accept. You can't say that that's not true. Obviously, that is the case. But then the question comes in solely independence upon external conditions. Can we have the ultimate happiness or the final happiness that we're seeking, that we desire? That we cannot accept. No, just independence upon external conditions. One cannot. So this is, from Buddhist philosophy is asserting. And what the Buddha taught is that merely independence, solely independence upon any external conditions, you cannot achieve the final happiness that you desire. and solely independent upon changing external circumstances, you cannot eliminate suffering ultimately, finally, because the ultimate source of happiness is within one's own mind, and the ultimate cause of suffering is within one's own mind. So it's only by looking deep within one's own mind that one can find, the final causes of happiness and eliminate the root sources of suffering. So this is the kind of the distinction between Buddhism and other views of how to achieve happiness or suffering, or freedom from suffering.
디두기 주조디 수수 생각을 요레스. 디인디가라 디와기 주조디에 수수 생각이지. 나 디와기 주조디 가시. 동행기 주조디 생각을 요레스. 동행기 주조 생각을 요에디 가리. 다디 상제 종리 되기 디송용도. 다디 송용디가라 동행기 주조디 지당 동행기 주만부 슈르기 진의 주스거로. 다 진스러디가라 디레 가소리. 주조디 많이 가시. 그봐. 루부진이 소리지. 루지바 진지 츠니스거로. 베는 누구지와도 주조디 사변차거로. 추당 류당 사다 디수제디의 진스거로. 그래서 디나시 동해지와가 진디 슈로니. 이내 동해 요약이 주조디 배 이지 동해를 차천배 이내 이지 동해기 주조디 생랑가는 그랬어. 다 생각을 유지 동해기 주조디 가르스는 어디가라 배는 가서 되바치와 되바세지고라 되샤세디 주조지래. 다 뉴먼신다디 주제디 아장장. 차도 맞제 뇌신 너신 송야다 다나신기 로버타와 아니 가서 우리 자바세다 다나신기 니네 니슈기 나로다다 넘버 신의 치유 상바 치워세다 아니 유의 주세다 되기 밤에 봐서 뭐부지도하다 다 조조디 되어치워 다나신기 유의 신자지죠 신자지예요. 다나신기 추미시바 되어치워도 추미시바 세죠로 되어치워도 추미시바기 제거디 니의 양시 추미시스 많이 라는 되신시스 되어치워서 어디가라 수수的매비자라 간대지나 매비자라지 통세 상물로 띵하는 고도 세디 수수의 매비자라 상물은 되벌려야디는 되어치워세지 다 추미시바세디 수수의 매비자라 지종사수나 지종은 되어만 니고도스 니종은 송고도스 딘데긴 되어디라 추미시바 되어치 추미시기 제거들이다 다 군이 니가기 자원 되샤수를 싫어다 자원스라 그래 군이 용액 신 되샤수를 싫어 그래서 뒤수체디 단 돌주는 되바세지는 지 센디의 차에 류당 되들이다 야분도 상부 장는 되샤스 말해 단 되샤세디 생유디의 수버스 거다 간 수버스로 디간라 가서 배나 자르진다고 지유나 자르진 디간의 슈나 슈기신다 디간의 자로이나 군 자르지 고도에미도 디나신 되샤세디 유디간라 차용 디간라 센디 유디의 차용디 센디 유디간은 자르지지네 디네 고도교용다 고마도 가디이나디 양의 디센의 코로지디 근데 지금 되샤스 되샤스는 디지 요래 디자는 마세비 무연이주레 체리 계획 이동을 통해 딘데기 남수이지 나와지 실을 샤네 단다기 생유디를 수비 루디레고 그래서 디수제디다 동행이 자와레스 디송용도 다 간데스레스라는 양치시죠.
So then if we look within the mind to see, well, what are the causes of happiness within the mind? What are the causes of suffering within the mind? So first, if we look at suffering, the main cause, one of the main causes of suffering is desire. And then there are other afflictive emotions also, lack of contentment. And I mean, both this kind of desire and lack of contentment, they both arise from attachment. But then there's other, there's like a whole list of 20 secondary, 20 main minds and 20 mental factors, 20 mental factors that are all different forms of afflictive states of mind, afflicted emotions, you can call. For example, anger, and then resentment, hostility, arrogant pride, guile and deceit, and then a few others I think Rinpoche mentioned, but I don't remember. But the main ones, there's many different types of afflictive emotions, but they mainly fall into attachment and kind of aversion or anger. But here, to stick with attachment, then these two forms, one is like desire for something. So that is when you see something that you don't have and then you want it, right? And then the other is discontentment or a lack of contentment. And that is where like you have something, but then one is not enough, then you need two, and then two is not enough, and you need three, and you always need more and more, never being content with what you have. And at the root of both of those is this fundamental attachment. So if we look at like what is attachment in general, to see something as pleasant or attractive, there's no problem with that. That's ordinary. There are good things and we can see them as good, and that's fine. But attachment is like a kind of exaggeration where on the one hand, it's like when the mind becomes obsessed with something. So imagine if you take like glue and put it on a piece of paper, and then take another piece of paper and stick it to the glue, then it's very difficult to take the first piece of paper off. No, it sticks and you can't peel it away from the first. So attachment is like that. When the mind sees a pleasant object and then becomes kind of obsessed with it, becomes like stuck to it, so that when you're attracted to it and you can't easily like take your attention away from that, you become sort of entranced by that thing. And then another feature of attachment is where you exaggerate the attractiveness of something. So although an object has some degree of attractiveness, you exaggerate it far beyond that and blow it out of proportion.
수수랑이 스신 유세기 유지 당가서 연구로 요로 다 수수기 되버지스기 유딘데지 여바이나 유딘데지 유나 다 딘데지 유 춘체라 유디 유디를 때네 동해 용해디 디는 구주 유디를 미빈 되샤 여바 디는 구주 그래서나 쿨러 미빈 되샤 여바이나 이 쿠체도 선택지야 아니 저지야 다나신기 가서 그래 도바지야 다나신 디된다가 뉴저토야 디된다가 뉴저를 디는 자리 줘야 강연 상황 디는 구조용도 근데 수수인 되셔야서 무부지 무부지를 미신다기 가정마저 라바 창디가나 마찬스 가정마저 라바 마무 창디가 노나요다 같이 이것을 방고 디미자라 라바 창디 디출라당 같이 디우도 다 게시 유디는 되셔 강연면들이다 되셔 강연면은 신다지기 라바 창외는 그것도 참 차내차 요나요 이게 심벌을 길이도
So how can we see that attachment is a cause of suffering and cause of problems? It's because, take an example, think of any object towards which you have attachment. Then as soon as, we just observe the object, but the problems only really start when we generate attachment for the object. So just observing an object is fine. But then if we observe an object with attachment, then we can see, we start worrying about, what happens if I don't have the object? May I be able to be with it more? Or then we start, different problems start. We start thinking, what if someone takes it away? Or what if I lose it? Or where is it now? Or what's happening with the object? And so, it starts disturbing our mind, and then problems start. For example, if someone else comes and picks it up and grabs it and starts playing with it, and then we get irritated, thinking, why do they have to touch that? Why don't they just leave it alone? What if it breaks? Then what? And that's all because of our attachment, right? And then if it does break or we lose it or something, then even we become angry that someone else did something to that. And all of that comes from our attachment. We can see that because with regard to the same object, if we didn't have any attachment, then if someone starts playing with it, then we think, okay, whatever, they play with it. If it breaks, it's no problem. Like, I don't care. So we can see that the mind becoming disturbed and the sort of problem starting comes from, not from the object, but from our attachment to the object.
아니 다나신 디레 가사 나주기 나주 상리 나로라 우리 마부 중소나 딜레 띠네 심바지부 용그레상 팅겨다 좋아 다나신 나주 상 나로 우리 뇽주 침바이나 우리 매버차나 강에 티그레상 우리 매버디기 심바마지바디 용그레상 나주 팅겨다 마지바도스 우리 내수라 심바지부 차야다 마지바 차야기 주조디 무디 차려 무 망보다 뉴뉴디 차고 가레스 러딩하나 단대 내가를 가서 무 망보 좋는 가고 싶지 초래야 무 뉴든 루딩하나 마가오다 미지바 차야기 초디 용야디 가바투디 얼스는 시자 자오디 아주 신낭로라 무일라 되베디 무일은 되신 저 신차디 여바 인상 다 우리 마음도 그렇게 가야 돼. 우리 녀도 그렇게 간다. 메가와 차리는 거래. 가레스 러디간 게시처럼 우리를 자원이 신차 매버자. 양의 신차 총도 침이 가도들이다. 우리를 메가와 차리 거다. 진짜지 거를 우리 총내야 저랑 집이 차요 말. 배나처럼 우리를 되는 누가 망부지 총이나. 다 미용의 쟁이 총딩 하라. 저랑 가야 파셔 너무 많이 니가 요다. 저 다양한데가 누다스가 저영가나 주의하기 니가 두서. 우리를 되는 강연 팅이 미치려다. 우리 총나. 우리를 메가와 차비 거를 우리 총나야 집이 차입니다. 다 우리를 가부 유배 거를 우리를 되샤 유배 거를 우리 총소나 다 시부 가보다 마총은 메가와 차야 용디 그래서 투서디 우리는 되어 유배 되차 투디도 되어 유나 되어 유배 거를 되어 무부디 되어 유세기 무부디 총은 가보지 되어 유배 거를 되어 무부디 마총은 메가와 차但对吧？早年没别个了，没，第了早年对吧？没别个了，第穷那样改给，变成加垃圾了下去没呢？你们的当铺打的 iPad 当铺打的干了，变成，俺 iPad 别搞了，他当铺打加垃圾呀，医院的别呀不呀嘛去的那电忙不修熊不多，这呀了，但 iPad 这边老用呀不修掐啥上，那那就成当那的忙不起的。但第三 iPad 被忙不下，忙不下这个，但第三要么这 iPad 开过来，你是基本的几乎差不多，那个路啥过来去接，但今年中的，那个同意呢，他是会超给明年数下多，现在的中呢搞不来的可能对吧？有张人多，当不的现场路的人对现有个，你的讲了，对现早里面的搞修来的。
So, for example, another example is take money. For most of us, then we think, if we have more money, the more money we have, then we can do different things and buy different things, and so we'll be happier. So when we get more money, we feel happy. And then within the less money we have, then we can't do things we want and can't buy things we want, so we feel unhappy. So for most of us, we think like that. The more money I have, the happier I be. The happier I am, and the less money I have, the more unhappy I am. But again, that comes from not from the money itself, but from our desire for money. So because we have this desire and this kind of expectation that the more money I have, then the more things I can do, then when we have more money, we feel happier. And when we lose money or have less, or money becomes less, then we feel unhappy. But that happiness or unhappiness comes from our desire and our kind of expectation that we put on money. So for someone who didn't have any attachment, didn't have any desire or attachment for money, then even they get more money, their mind won't be especially affected. They'll just feel like, okay, whatever. And even they lose money, their mind also won't be affected. The mind just won't be affected. Their mind just sort of remains neutral. And then there's a danger that even maybe someone gives them a lot of money, and then if they don't feel happy, the other person gets angry that they're not happy that they just received a bunch of money, right? So another example is take an object that we really like. It's the same with regard to an object. Like for myself, I have an iPad. I really used to like iPads. I like iPads quite a lot. So at first when I got one, then I thought, it's so great to have an iPad because you can fit so many texts in it, so many texts, and then you can study, and it'll really help your study a lot to have an iPad and be able to carry all these books around, just in one simple thing. And so I really liked at first. But then I got, another iPad and another iPad, and then after I had a few, then to carry one is very heavy, then you have to carry two is very heavy, then you always have to recharge it, and it's just kind of a hassle. So now I feel like, I'm not so excited about iPads anymore. It's like, if I have one, okay, if I don't have one, also not a big deal, no? So we can also see that with related to objects. It's when we have a lot of desire, then we have all these hopes that we place on it. And so if we get more, then we're happy. And if we don't have what we're hoping for, then we feel unhappy.
근데 인상 여어도 동에서 디 주주의 실로로 유베이나 디 주주의 실로 유베이나 다 배는 뭐부지 디워지지 주주의 임베이나 뭐부 다랑기 미창만을 디워지고 지르다 디 차고 말에 강사 당부 수쇼디라 디워징이 지부수경기 주주의 주다랑 나라 디워 지부수고를 나라 디여장 지워라 상상 저디고디 자라다랑 강사 신다지라 동해제디고 무부지기 나라 디워지 무다랑 강사 신다지라 강에 수디고 그래서 디워기 주 문에디 멤비다 자라다랑 나라 존은 같이 부수고 자라다랑 미신다지라 존은 콜라 강에 수요고 강에 소용고 미지바 마가오 차용고 세상 디에기 주소디 실로로 말이 소나 상루기 돈이 모부디를 따당디 마주 생기 모부디를 따당디 조어지 세대 때문에 수토나 아니 디토네 모부탄지 랑을 디워딩이 줄을 봐 주토에 지어레스 상지 중딩데 어디 손부터다 디워기 주소디 랑을 요르스
당은 딜을 되네 모부탄지
랑을 디워딩이 진지를 봐 주도 가주도
알아요.
마주 생기 마주 상루 토네 모부 참말라 균진 춘배진의 수고 참말라 따당리 세대 때문에 수토나 세대 때문에 양다버지 수토나 다 춘배진 종내에 미춘배진 종내에 참아 랑을 디워 제킹이 진을 봐 주토야지 진이 상조랑도 주로 센다지 디수도도 다 디수도는 시우지 러지 말 할래 러지
You can keep putting on to address the curatization. So earlier Rinpoche at the beginning of this example, before the example of money, Rinpoche had made the point that there's a difference between causes and conditions. So that comes to be relevant here, what Rinpoche just was saying. So what Rinpoche was saying earlier, it's important to understand the difference between causes and conditions. A cause is like the main cause for something, and then the conditions are like the contributing causes for something. So if you take like a sprout, like the sprout of a rice seedling or something, then the main cause for the sprout is the seed. Right, this is the seed which mainly gives rise to the sprout. But then there's other conditions, just like water, the warmth of the sun, the richness of the soil, nutrients from the soil, and so forth. Those are contributing factors or conditions which give rise to that. So our question here, and what Rinpoche has been explaining, is what is the main cause of our happiness? What's the main cause of our suffering? Is it something external or something internal in the mind, right? So from these examples, we can see that, in relation to the very same object, one object, it could be receiving that object, having that object can be a source of happiness for someone. But for another person, the very same object can be a source of suffering. It can be a cause of suffering. So from that, we can see that any object itself, the object in and of itself is not the main cause of the happiness of one person or the suffering of another person. Rather, the main cause is within the person's mind, how they view that object. And so, so therefore we can conclude that suffering and happiness we can't ultimately achieve through any external objects. Rather, we have to look at how suffering arises in our minds and how happiness can be developed in our minds. So by training, gradually we can, if we train skillfully, gradually we can reach a very excellent state where whatever external conditions arise, be they ostensibly, conditions for suffering or conditions that are conducive conditions for happiness, whatever external conditions arise, we can transform them with our minds into a cause for happiness. So that's called like the sort of training, mind training of taking difficulties into the path.
여기 주조 세나 여변 시디 생기강의 여변 시디디 통용거다 디 딘시디 야용거로 배는 가서 강에 순의 시티에 있나야 강에 뒤에 가도라 오 강에 용약이 주의 진 상마 수수 사유베이나 수수의 도유베이나 강에 용약이 춘이리 라신리 주진 초나 제보 용약이 춘이리 동네 강에 용약이 라신바다 다야지 용미시버지 수수강의 용바수를 된다지 마인바 용시버지 용주여버지 마세디 용약이 주의 진 수수 도장 수수강요 세상 주의 진 초나 제보 용약이 춘이리 상에 라신바다 다야지 디다 도수나 다 강에 용구도 상 센시부지 가서 마지버 친구당 센시부지 투대디 용고말이 라신바다 다도나 라신바다 지대 니네 강에 종수나 강에를 연된 다야지 강에를 연된 유가 다야 가르스나 강에디 중벌을 떼네 양용사이 양용만 부사이 아니 강에기 오네 다 강에디 중배 거라 이 카도디라 베 심바 빠마숑바지 센마숑바지시네 강에를 동민시시시네 강에디를 제워지투이나 다디 문에 보스 미디를 보스 강에 체디 다디자마세 강에서 되고 미상망의 체유 버시바 다 수수지부도 마도 강에디 용금에 버티는 요 세상 진짜 상지 당요디가라 센디 쇼망부지네 심바디만도 스카소리 린자본도 수용고도와.
So what the point we want to arrive at and make clear is that how happiness comes from within the mind. But first, to look at problems a little bit more is that in general, when if unfortunate things happen to us, then we become upset and we have suffering. Then if fortunate things happen to us, we have some happiness. But one way we want to train is that even when unfortunate things happen to us and we meet with difficulties, that we learn to transform those into a cause for happiness by the way we look at them, with our minds, by the way we approach them with our minds. So, for example, one way to do this is that when we meet with difficulties and problems, is to think instead of, well, before this, is that it's just the nature of the way things exist, that when certain causes and conditions come together, like when the causes and conditions for problems to arise come together, then it's just the nature that they will arise. There's nothing we can do about that. So when unfortunate circumstances and causes and conditions for difficulties and suffering come together, then it's just the nature that suffering will arise. So if we ourselves create the causes and conditions for suffering, then it's inevitable that will come. It's just the nature of cause and effect, essentially the way things work. So one thing is, when suffering befalls us, to recognize that, well, that's because the causes and conditions for that sort of suffering arose, and so that's just a natural result. It's just the nature of things. It's like a natural principle that when the causes and conditions for something are complete, then a certain result will be produced by that. And there's nothing that can stop that. So when we ourselves experience suffering, instead of being, kind of dramatic, getting all dramatic about it and upset about it, if we just, with a sort of objective mind, recognize, well, this has arisen in my experience because the causes and conditions for that came together. So there's nothing I can do about it now except try to react to it or deal with it in the best possible way. So then one way to deal with it is by looking at the benefits of having difficult experiences. Like one of the benefits of having difficult experiences, one, you get experience, right? You learn something through experience, right? And then another is that, if you face that challenge with sort of courage, then it helps to build your courage. You become more resilient. It's like you learning to deal with that difficult experience. It causes you to have more sort of heroism or more kind of courageous power in a way, and that is also a benefit to you.
지금 강연 세쇼로 강연 세디 무슬는 지게서리 당원의 장애기 강연 내준 뒤중바에는 원의 강연에 세지 미술의 뒤중에 강연에 세지 문의 지금 뒤에서 말씀 그렇지 내단 뒤중바에나 강연에 세지 미 상황을 세월다 아니서는 미 니도 지중스라 고르베 생쇼 생기도 상류도 지중 제발 시고요라 배는 가서 나중에 미 나서 맹킹 미 소도 차츠면이나 나서 매매 미지를 차츠면이나 나서 매매 미티수 제디 구슬 나서 요말 수고는 나서 미세 요말 매두가가 강에 매버레스는 말에 나서 맹이 미티를 군소를 강에 신다요다 강에 가리고스나 내가 야부레기 민두스 로신가 땅이지는 신가 야부레기 민두 차바 야부 땅 민두스 차바 야부 땅 어떤 무지하면서 차바 야부 땅진 부 마제와인 어디 가서 신가디 상이 가르쳐 용스다 강에 콜라 강이 디어 나가는데 다 내가 징이지는 오다 신다게 가르쳐 용 아니 강기 우치기 가르쳐 용스디 콜라 강이 디어다 나사 맹이 미치를 찾아가 있다. 나사 유행이 미치 따윤디가라. 나사 유행이 미치 나사 맹이 미디. 나사 매와 있는 집아라. 나사 매와 총도 다 하나 씹지고 나사 매와 장 빼지고 줘요. 아야 나사 유행이를 찾아가 있는 나사 나로를 뭐만 보여라. 나사 휴지 좀만 보여라. 그래서 나사 딘지 가르진 자다 오즈 딘지다. 미던도시나 다 딘데 용이지는 나 쿠란기 나서 오스다 나서 주고나 딘내가 차스는 집어라 상사수리지 엔 쿠란은 나서 휴지 용이디오 니 나서 디 쿠인 나서 나시 양 좀 신다지 거다 나서 쿠의 휴지 용이 미치다 용이가나 야 나서 딘지 용이 디기 내다 쿠내다데 야 쿠 나서 오스 딘지리 주에게로 자에게로 치어요 상사 야 가서 그래 나서 마도 휴종신의 지어라 상사스 다 나사 시우용이지 벤자자고 시우용이지 찾으면이나 양 코랑기 신제 가리어스 너희니가나 오 소디 로다 나사 디여베이나 소지 마시위지 데투버 종나상 마시위지니 데투버 상 종나상 디 그래서 강에 초당데 담으려지 도시 뭐면 비상 다야 쇼신다지는 일이다 또 년이 배선 샤야디 된다디 구순의 지도 별라 녀마 전간나로 미망부 주고로 녀마 나중하고 시주시고 나중하고 지라 다 전간의 주인이 미망부 전간의 주인이 다랑 샤야지고 말다 다 강에 배어 동고로다 동이 세요 말이야 지랑 길 노길 세요 마세베지 도만보다 다 도만보다 지진에 랑시자니 투나 제 자사라고 정시 전이 주는 자사요 아니스는 라발의 지지 말에 잘라지 말에 이 주니 샤를 시서요 컴바시 다现在顶尖卡都低了 시당 시제스는 배갈래가 나도 배가소리 set very set 제디 거뒤 프랑스기 나로를 다 다버시 두부당 시마도버시 시서매버시 두부다버 당디디는 구수세나 다 시도는 집어라 내단 딘데우다 시도는 집으래 되나도 딘데 총벌 시에서 거뒤 칼라루디강라 딘데 총스도 칼라루선 루지지네 아니 칼라루설다 타상기 나로라 지딘데 샤요로 지딘데 딘데지 문제는 지치의 police 당이 어디 유엔에 국가지 총시지네 지디 키지지네 그러나 장시交토의冲突 디 중원디 강라다가 장시交토 수시지 그 돈이 그럼 지지사는 다 에치 까마 같이 진단주 되야기 근데 돈이 난주 되야기 단는 뉴버스는지 단도 지지사는 양 유사로 길을 지지사 그래서 말랑 시交토 수시지네 우거치지 proud say proud
Yeah, proud.
She's
More
not-
like heroic, courageous.
不过节的不光那不越是
네.
那先生那第刚年谁对你这个刚年说对你下边的米卡些机地里比较农村起来了比下那样民主米卡些修个机是哪修个机
Shulgaji, oh,
Shulgaji.
Shulgaji.
日本好像就为呢修了个记录了时间别干了了哎日本地过来多这样修了个几时间干来看这修了个记录了时间的干来这边是呢你刚才叔的对你下就是第一就讲了我年纪刚年写的没长嘛了你种呢别刚年轻不的写越上嘛的先生第一就讲了商率你到起不越为呢刚年卡的呢种呢动力气给要嘛的上的你到底越呢卡的种呢要西南没有经验有事
So one thing I didn't translate from before was that I didn't translate was Rinpoche was saying another benefit of oneself experiencing difficulties is that if you can recognize that, well, it's not only me that experiences this difficulty. Other people have that. No, there's no difficulty that we experience that no one else experiences, something similar. So that's another benefit of when you meet, conditions through which you experience suffering, is if you can remember that other people experience this, then you can develop compassion based on that. But then now what Rinpoche is saying, when we think about a difficulty, what do we mean by that? What is a difficulty, really? Because there's no one experience that you can say whoever meets that experience is going to be difficulty for them. It depends upon who experiences that. For some, because people's strength of mind is different, Someone with a great strength of mind, very skillful, maybe whatever experience they meet, it's not particularly difficult. And someone with a much less strength of mind, or more small-minded in a way, then they meet many things which they feel difficult. There's no one experience you can point to and say, that's a difficulty, right? So then Rinpoche is giving many different examples of that. What was before? So first was the example of like a farmer or someone working in an office. So take example of like someone who's doing farming. So someone who's doing farming, then, there's all different kind of difficult potential problems that come with farming. So for example, even someone plants the seeds, then they worry, is there going to be rain or not, right? And even if there's rain, then there's no difficulty of not having rain, but then they worry, are there insects that are going to come and eat the crops? I think even if there is rain and there's no insects eating the crops, then they might worry, well, is there going to be a good price when I get the crop? Am I going to make a profit on it or not, or something? So there's all different kinds of potential difficulties that come. And then if you're working in an office, for example, you always have someone who's higher than you, a manager or a boss or someone, and there's always the worry, even you don't have any sickness, but there's always a kind of worry that, you might get fired or demoted or some problems might come because of your boss. But then for someone who has like some sickness, then they might look at someone who's farming or in office who doesn't have sickness with envy. because they have sickness and the other person doesn't, right? And then within sicknesses, there's different ones. There's very like heavy sickness or kind of middling sort of sickness or very light sickness. So someone with a middling kind of sickness, they look at someone with a milder sickness and think, oh, it must be so happy just to have that sickness and not the one I have. You know? Or someone with a very heavy kind of sickness, then they might look at someone with the kind of middling sort of sickness and be like, oh, if only I could be like that and have that sort of sickness. So it's all relative, you know. It all depends upon kind of your way of looking at the situation from your own particular perspective. And then, of course, you know, beyond the heaviest sickness is like your life, protecting your life. Because for any human, we naturally, you know, treasure our life. We don't want to lose our life. But then even in some situations, and it can be the case that it looks better to lose your life than to give up your life than to stay in the situation you're in. For example, in Tibet, in the past, you know, when the Chinese, communist Chinese then took over Tibet, and I mean, in the past also now, then they put, you know, people in prison, like political prisoners, and then tortured them in different ways. So some people, you know, and, you know, not withholding food from them or beating them or electrocuting or torturing them in different ways. So it was the case in the past, you know, some people, they're tortured so heavily that in order to get out of that situation, they'd rather commit suicide. But then there's no conditions to commit suicide because the people, you know, the communist Chinese maintaining the prisons, they don't give them any opportunity to commit suicide so that they can keep torturing them, right? So it became, for some people, it became the case that they look for, you know, how can I find an opportunity to get out of the situation, just to, you know, to end my life? So of course, for ordinary human beings, that's the last thing we want to do is end our life, you know. But for someone in such a difficult situation, then that's what they want to do. It's like that looks, you know, that looks better than the situation they're in. So it was the case, I think, sometimes when they're serving food, there was like knives, a knife put out with the food service, and of course there's guards looking, but then some of the prisoners look for an opportunity when the guard's not looking to grab the knife and try to end their life. So they even, and it takes a kind of courage in that situation to you know, end your life rather than endure this unbearable torture. So in short, like what's difficult for one, but that also is a kind of courage. For most of us, it'd be incredibly difficult to end our life. But for a person in that you know, situation of enduring incredible torture, then they develop the kind of courage to do that in order to be free from that situation. So in short, there's all different kinds of you know, to say that this is a difficulty and this is not, is something you can't really say. It depends upon the different person's perspective or state of mind or strength of mind.
现在讲的地理下，我说卡拉塞约别个了样，卡拉塞拿落了地理要起用我们都上现在几个人，地理要起兄弟讲了，样地理毛起用我们都现在几个人，样卡拉给过了现在没有下的样对色的，你单单里亚起用我们都是的这个地刚年了自己用过的，现在地我对色均出去是吧？上东也去，上东那的西北呢？就是对这个上东呢，变呢，卡拉新不三面为呢三月个了哦，新不面呢三月的呀，或者中国的多嘛的别呀，或者也上是吧？但三但是卡图叔叔的水面为呢，这些嘛，通过路呢这个的，龙年没建议有的，跌呀或者也上是吧？那你呀，当代龙高起呢，当代马拉呢呀？Anda mara na chen ke mare tos kune chuse chini chini ya rasi ragres ke mare ka ne dan kare che ne ya bas ndigi du se ji ba chu xi bas la wu re de ba chung de chu xi ba de de yi ji sang dong de ji dang xi yi tun jin kan de ji yue yi na re yang ne ji mi tun be jin de ji yin ba yi na re nang jin yong da ge mi tun be jin le zi de ji yin na re nanjing yongzha ge tunpe jing le zi de jing na re ku tsama la ngui ni yor shu ni pen tu be shu ji dang ne be shu ji ni yo be de tsama ji ba ji jiang da tsama ji ba ji jiang di tong su na是吧？被那主不圆的压不着啊，那主不圆的压不着的， 주부 유배 있는 주부 유배 강해지 주부 유배 뒤 주부도 방방 무지 뛰는 거보다 저 땅굴에 뛰는 거래 아니 그게 제가教授呢 그게 리퀘스트 제수냐 뒤 내가 제거로 내가 뭐 그거로 지제로 신이 제로 근데 주부 유배 강해래 에 주부 매네야 저 매배 강해 매는 매배 빈도 유는 유배 빈도 유는 유배 강해 그래서 쇼 상만이 상당지진다 가르치면 해야 가서 그래 아우스레 상상소리지로 근데 제토나 아니 시기 진상이 가르치고 있는 양 상루 나로了시부지 마치고 제디 가부로
So then, yeah, another example is then like with eating food, sometimes if we don't have contentment, then when we have some food, then we think, oh, but couldn't it be a little better? Maybe this food would be a little better to have. And then if we have a little better food, then we think, oh, but it's not enough. I wish I had just a little bit more. And then if we had just a little bit more like we want, then we think, but this place isn't so nice. It'd be nicer to eat this in a nice place, in a nicer place like that. So then there's always this kind of, as long as we have discontentment, then whatever we have, it's not enough. We want something more and more and more. Whereas if we have contentment, then, if we have this food, whatever food, we think, oh, well, whatever, this is fine. It'll fill my stomach. At least I won't be hungry, right? Or if we don't have food now, we might think, well, in a couple hours, I'll probably get some food. So I just don't worry about it now. So if we generate that kind of contentment, then if we have something good, it's okay. If we don't have something particularly good, it's also okay. Like with regard to anything, in an ordinary worldly way of looking at it, there are some things that are good and some things that are not so good. So it's important to train to be okay, mentally okay with either one and have sort of equanimity towards them. So it's just having mental contentment then protects us from disappointment on one hand and sort of out of control hopes and desires on the other hand. I mean, it's also the case with friends. In general, friends is a good thing to have friends, right? But then having friends can also become a problem. Like if you have friends and then get along well, but then they make requests of you. They want you to do this, and then they want you to do that, and then they ask you to do that, and then it becomes you have all this work to do in order to fulfill the desires of your friends, right? But on the other hand, if you don't have any friends, then you're lonely, and then when you have hardships, you don't have anyone to help you, and so there's also difficulties that come with not having any friends. So something like friends, then we also have to generate sort of equanimity where, okay, if I have friends, that's okay. If I don't have any friends, that's also okay, and not be too dramatic about either direction about it.
안 되네 그라 말아서 쉬르지 진了되네 상류 나로了基不用的马用塞的啊最近对吧的啥的对吧目不地了对吧路远没他定对下基不赢的没呢看对地中呢上面对吧去了对吧地下不多身体对吧对吧的啥的说细进了地呢啊做了对我身上了操对我来啊地就做的卡瓦土的儿是呢细쉬르지 진 디다 딜은 되바 유명하다라리 그래서 되바 어디 가르마는 친구나도 된다 세부 튼거도 아니 디나도는 아주 체도 집에 총 담아 가서 체도 집에 총여봐 체도 총 취지 총제봐 취지 취지제봐 취지 취지제봐세 단다 내된 디바디 수제디 취지 취지제에 들어가래 담아 발라니 말이야
Dharma pada.
이처럼 나도 못해. 디나로라 되베 총세죠. 되베 총세지. 되베 고라 리구지어. 디딜 때에 있는 거 세바고. 슈르기 진을 되는 거 소를 초되어 레말레세디 슈르기 무부 튠진 디더딜라 되바 유메라라디. 되바 유다메 딜 투디고. 되바 세딩 가서 생기 상루 당당지로 상루기 제주지로 되바는 가서 강조지도 강조 수수기 수순 되바도 수수가 생기 제주로 但되바라 강조 제도가 있나 다 간제지 시르기 튠진 간제지 종나야 아니 가서 그래 딜러 때네 강에 친구 제도에 대해 가도야 딜러 때네 시부집에 가서 그래 배 세게 개 가부지 해줘라 맞아 시부지 배 파자지니 가부 세게요 근데요 지 가서 그래 미지기 양배 디매버 차수는 시부지 스틴제제 디야 디야 미용에 까 디까고 다가 따다 찬용부 소리 지수도야지 단 되바딜라 수수기 생긴 되바딜라 컨트롤 간데 지고서는 되발레기 된 되발레베 깨지디 깨지니바딜라 되베 모부디 되바 낭신 수수 당도 내나 로 디수를 라야기 표시 제야디 롱어레당 메롱어레스로 디 수수의 중원의 롱어레 메롱어레 디 중요하게 레가디 제나 롱어레 메롱어레 디 수수의 니버도 구버레 미고버레 되바다 참는데 가서 야부 가르면 되발리기로 되바 짱기 지스만 로제 되발레베 기진니버디가 시럽이지 다네 제와다네 되베 무부디 수수도 구버레 니버도 구버레 미고버레 로 되베 무부디 되바 집나신 수수기 제바이나 롱그레 롱마레 롱미롱세도 구미구세 제바지고 근데 쟤는 루토나 심바 임부지 대도에딩으로
There's just, right. So then it's important to see how so much of our our happiness or disappointment in relation to objects comes in dependence upon our desire, our attachment towards them, right? So when we have attachment towards objects, then when we get what we want, we feel happy. And when we don't get what we want, we feel unhappy, right? So that comes from the side of the mind. So in order to avoid having, difficulties when something happens that we don't like, or we don't get what we want, then one method is to reduce our desire, reduce our attachment for certain things and for certain outcomes. If we don't have such strong attachment to getting something one particular way, then when it doesn't happen that way, we're not so upset. It's not such a difficulty for us. And also when things do go the way we want, we don't become so over the top elated about it. We can still enjoy, but with some kind of equanimity. So it's important to see how our attachment, how it engages with objects, and then learn to control our attachment, right? Learn to see how our attachment works and how it's unrealistic in relation to objects, and then learn to reduce and control our attachment and have a sort of more contentment and equanimity with the way we relate to objects. And thereby we can have more control over what sort of experience we have and not be so affected by and so dependent on solely external conditions, right? We take more our happiness into our own hands.
다 간들 아주 든든하시마 맞이없이 수이동을 되네 수르기 진 수이동을 되네 디오도 단님이 아니 드마신부 칼라신부 리젠장부 근데 이 시인되행을 되네 教具你定了教具你调度给你结为那tundu的基本人但吸引对岸的的调穷不的穷不的干过嘛的可能告诉人让给俺给穷的可能提了被教呢他都打不起了自己主要的那些的满意被拖你穷不的kun这个玩意吸收了的呢米了告诉人米了的地不当的了的呢什么机会用不的捐给嘛的 가고 말해 이날 뒤장을教具呢 tundu的 基本차고第一个시기 수다 소了 第一调主要뒤장만 해보지 상了동당的 주어 당시지 두번 이지 나버 시바 두번 이지 나버 뒤 비제 당니 아주 미 낭주 비제 당 낭주 그런 게 돈이调主에 지에도 싫어 공부도 당 무에 내주 간대 이미 뒤제버지 아니 띵인제공 되게 돈이你到进步水，如果群众的如果进步水，刚才看人的动力基因上不不，你到进步，这最后的讲了你是细数的说的点嘛，个南上路的调度同的进步，我的地铁我也什么的，上街兄弟的，去接周期的什么，
Then another important thing is to not be like animals, because animals, you can see the way, how do animals have suffering and happiness? It's like they turn solely to external things, to food or shelter or protection, and they're looking solely to external things to have well-being or to be free from suffering. So if we also solely look towards external things to achieve well-being or to be free from suffering, then it's like we're being just like animals, right? So but rather we have, human intelligence. So also before, one thing I didn't translate from what Rinpoche was saying before was, how do we control our attachment? Is that, when we observe an object and then see we're engaging with the object with attachment, having desire for the object. Then in the very next minute, we have to generate wisdom which checks, like, is this an accurate way of engaging with that object? By following this desire, is that a suitable way to act or not a suitable way to act? Is that like is there a need? Do I really need that object or not? When we see an object with attachment, desire, one way to think is, do I really need that? If I really get that, am I really going to be happier? Or without that object, will I also be okay? Is there a real need to follow that attachment or not, to have that object or not? And also that mind of attachment, the way it's engaging with the object and the kind of action that it's suggesting to me, is that really suitable to act in that way with regard to the object, or is it actually not suitable? So those two things we can check. Is it suitable to engage in the way attachment is telling me or not? And do I really need that object in the way attachment makes me kind of feel or not? Is that accurate? But then, so then if we, animals, though, they don't have that kind of intelligence to analyze in that way. They just, when they desire something, they just follow that desire. When they don't desire something, they just, follow that. So if we just blindly follow attachment, especially towards external things, then we're really acting like animals, and then we're under the control of external conditions. When things happen that are pleasant to the five senses, we feel happy, and when things happen that are unpleasant to the five senses, we feel unhappy. So it's like we're under the control of external conditions. So rather than that, we should use our human intelligence to use wisdom, deciding how we want to relate to objects or not, and then develop qualities of the mind, like good concentration, or like courage, or like loving kindness, or compassion, qualities of the mind that don't depend so much on external conditions.
那囊就我这对起的些，查结我的用的，那原点是就么的，这些在告诉了，那社会学习的俺说最可能用不多，蛮多是真的对去那听。
So that's it for a short kind of introduction to Buddhism. So now, although there's not time now to explain the foundation of all good qualities in any detail, but we'll just very briefly go through it. Then also one thing Rinpoche said before that I forgot was, if to know more about the Buddhist explanation of how desire works, look at the Dharmapada. And within the Dharmapada, there's one chapter, I think, on attachment and how, the faults of attachment, and description of how attachment works.
那第二多，原的是就么的，俺说囊卷变成对了，初级心的讲究于初心那是讲究于的对了功，然后呢。家庭他就打过金砖，其实家庭他介意等等，我说第二个初心，对了现场其实呢，第二的伊拉对不起，你伊拉对不明天的结果批，第二说的没怎么对呢说的第几了呢，狼用做了下工对其实呢，心里定出呢，说当我说上节了，上节给狼家了也提醒给狼对给那么就。랑가 되는 게 뭐고 맞아 로션지나 근데 이기 장바이네 이기 로긴기 괜하지 고도 단 지된 나로 되는 이메이나 지된을 내가 상징이 살이야 줘야라 로이나 더 랑가 지긴지 고고 그래서 랑 되는 게 신이 된주디 디수르 지레 가서그래 취량의 지역인 구수르 지차인 거로 그래서 딩딩가라 미지만 되는 소到年底季了，你出席的公信被没了，出席了所有的呢，心里定出呢送的，也给上届有光芒出席把的浪长嘛，你那句送的，浪的大长嘛，你举了几个节，新几老罗那是举了几个给告诉我的，我都那罗那事情呢，浪用着句的公节呢，你新了的许多，现在的了新了本书事情呢，是个的，新了长嘛。学习的两个本节去学的了，新了本书。
So the way we use this prayer, the foundation of all good qualities, is usually when before we recite this, we visualize a field of merit in the space in front, like Buddha Shakyamuni or something else. A very common thing to do is to recite the Guru Yoga of Lama Tsongkhapa. It's called the land. Ganden Lagyama, Tibetan. Anyway, the 100 deities of the land of joy. Yeah, thank you. 100 deities of Tushita, 100 deities of the land of joy. So it's like a guru yoga in relation to Lama Tsongkhapa. So we visualize like Lama Tsongkhapa, our own teacher, in front, and then recite the prayers related to the 7 limb practice, and then offer a short mandala. And then make requests to the guru, because just like we need a guru or a lama to show us, to teach us the path. Just like if we're going to study a language or study handwriting or something, we need a teacher who already knows about that we want to learn about. So similarly, if we want to develop the realizations on the path and ultimately achieve liberation from samsara or full enlightenment, then we need a teacher who knows more about that than us, who can show us the way and show us the path. So essentially what this prayer is that after you do all those preliminary practices up to making a mandala offering, then here we're like requesting the guru to bless us to develop realizations on the path, and we're doing a short contemplation of the entire path to enlightenment, and with each topic beginning with how to correctly rely upon a guru up to enlightenment, we're like making request that the Lama bless us to develop these realizations on the path. So over here is a painting of, just to the right of the door there, is a painting of the field of merit in relation to the 180s of the land of joy, or Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga. So the very first verse then reads, the foundation of all good qualities is the kind and perfect guru. Correct devotion to him is the root of the path. By clearly seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely upon him with great respect. So in essence, what this is saying is that may I be transformed into someone who can correctly rely upon a guru, who can correctly rely upon a teacher. May I become like that, be able to correctly rely upon a teacher.
계신이 야부시부 주요에 있는 수수상의 나누다 다디 니버도 공구도 지체구도 시지네 나니 꾸마 당이지 생기 나누도 야 가서 우리 꾸마 당이지 매바이나 예신이 가수 야부 유에 있는 핑이 말어 세상 랑 공부를 랑기 지면도 메로디 나니 꾸마 당에 조디 처음에 다버다 된지 된지 니가 상도에다 아니 처음에 다 상도에 띵띵하라 인생고 말말 린진니베 대외 딘상디 신의 니가 전진 시주르니 인생고의 니불렘빌로 진제메와 지워 신지로 류수요취 아니 류수요취 주를 뉴턴 집에 치워 쳔마당하세 베지 디바도 랑 공부라 랑기 진디다 랑기 진디 소요 다 랑기 진디 상단에 랑기 진디 리베 추시도 공투버지 신지라로는 아스
So then, in order to practice quickly relying upon a teacher, also we need the external condition of a teacher, of a pure teacher, a qualified teacher who knows the path. So that external condition of having a qualified teacher is one thing that we need to make progress on the path. But then we also need internal conditions, right? We need causes from within. If we don't have any particular interest in practicing or training and progressing on the path, then nothing will happen, no matter how good a teacher we have from the outside. So in addition to the external condition of having a fully qualified teacher, which we pray to have in the first verse, then we also need the internal conditions of recognizing our good fortune and the inevitability of impermanence and death, that death will come. So that's what's being spoken about then in the next 6 lines, where it says, understanding that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once, is difficult to find again and is greatly meaningful. Please bless me to generate the mind that unceasingly day and night takes its essence. This life is as impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. So this is talking about generating the internal condition of reflecting on impermanence and death, and thereby generating a sense of urgency with regard to training and practicing on the path.
那西语技术留的芝麻西，刚刚连着西行长完了，你我定不你别做差些超完那就光的技术大的主播就大的八个点么新技老师的，基本全部的全部也让些人不的，来军这个过当，来军这个过的送过的话做的，帮下民给我就，让些给我就给地方给做出现的些多新技老人呢，做的基本全部的全部也让些人不的送过。
So then the next 6 lines, then it explains very briefly then the path in common with beings of the small capacity or small scope. So it says there, after death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow. Finding firm and definite conviction in this, please bless me always to be careful, to abandon even the slightest negative action and accomplish all virtuous deeds. So what it's primarily talking about there is to engage in the primary practice for those of a small capacity, those of the small scope, which is to refrain from the 10 non-virtuous actions and practice the morality of refraining from those and engage in the opposite, the 10 virtuous actions. So it's making a prayer that may I be able to practice through pure morality in accordance with understanding of karma, and that abandons the 10 non-virtuous actions.
戒备名目 등의 군지고 이대미로 스베 핑수 지 니미리네 타베 디와라 되니 진부지와 신지로 손에 되니 진부지와 신지로 난다 상바디 장외 진의 시지 바유 진부 덴베자와 수수타보다 주번님부시고 신지로스디 기본 진의 투모에 나지를 먼저 송도 다디나 거의 핑수스나 수저 지루지엔 되베 연딩기卷顶顶的 송도戒备名目 등의 군지고 이대미로 다卷송송도인데戒备 오해매데 가수이 제네 오해매데 다디베卷起不了 디레리 베는 가수 zu이 동마치를 대치진 다리니 야부지 대인 대네 다리 야부지 대네 산이가 대무고 자거를 두고 자거를 쓰지 자는 도 제네 뭐가잖아요 다디卷 되베卷起수지리 다디 지력이나 상제기 넘버 다고 지력이가 지력이 나오려면 시송제 니 단위 지금 니는 송송도 제베 명목 동해 군지구 이데메롱 시송송도 이 되베 연den기卷들다 되베 연den기 되행기卷수다 지루지기 시 되행기卷 송송 바라 지력이 나오려면 디송제 가사 니버가히 지버 타와당스 스베 핀수 되베 연데 디수제디 라쮸 가르요스나 투마 디수제디 니에 레라고 요 말했어 니버 가버스 다 니에 제데 시부갈레 잡으러 니버 가시스 니 갈레 가버 라야 갈레 가버디 라산에 아니 이름 무치고 대로 제나 야버리 대 마르시앙고 지버 타와당스 니버 가히 지버 타와당스 아니 디니지 다 숨바디 디송도 가사 추 가사 초시 매지스 간다 초시스 디레 다디 뭐범이 봤어요 단디는 초스 디지 중원이 지 중원 사수나다 디기 초바 다 디기 베든지 디기도 상배 루지에지 요마레스 되베 연디 간데지 정보 있는 단디 중사스 다베 단에 손디 디숨세 있는데 로 가사 니베 초미스 주식 루지에요 말했어. 되베 내가 디니 추비 루지에요 말했어. 모빌로 시바디 디송的 시에 디메 봤어. 되베 연디 니 사베 지를 디니 송디베 르시니부디 시디 바베 차그레베스 차그 말했어. 르시니부디 추부슈 차. 로베는 가서 시에 송디다 추부슈 차 차용마다 심벌레도 보부 차야는 것이서 시에 디오메 봐. 추시에 메바 시송도
So in the next two verses, we'll read first. Seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering. They are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. Recognizing these shortcomings, please bless me to generate the strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Led by this pure thought, mindfulness, alertness, and great caution arise. The root of the teachings is keeping the pratimoksha vows. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. So this is essentially a prayer, wishing a prayer that whereby we wish to, we're praying to be blessed to develop the realizations in common with a person of medium capacity. So in the Lamrim, the three scopes, the middle scope. So we're praying to develop the realization of all the faults of samsara and generate a wish to be free from samsara. So that's what it's talking about here. And in the first verse there, it's talking about the faults of samsara, but it lists only 2 or 3, where it says seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering, and then they are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. There's only 2 listed there. That samsaric pleasures are uncertain and they cannot be relied upon. Whereas in the Jataka tales, it mentions 4 different faults of samsara. So the first is that it's difficult to find things that make you happy. Right? In samsara, finding things that make you happy is difficult. You have to work for it. It doesn't just come easily. So it's difficult to find the things that make you happy. And then once you find those things, they don't last long. If they lasted a long time, it would be great, right? But actually they don't. They easily or quickly disintegrate. Jigpa lawa. They easily disintegrate. So nye kawa, they're difficult to find. And jigpa lawa, they easily disintegrate. And then the third is that somebody 초시바. 초시바 매바.
되베 연딘디 니찬이 디니찬에다 지송상 뭐가 매바. 단디는 뭐가 매바 세지버리.
그죠.
숨버디 지버리.
무슨 뭐 매바. 알레 뭐바 제베 민공 동을 공기고 민공바. 제베 동을 공기고 시가서.
제베 민공 세지 숨버디.
Yeah, it doesn't come across in the 제베 민공 동을 공기고 이때 미로 시베 본소기. I think it's the cannot be relied upon is the mingung, isn't it? Anyway, it doesn't come across so well in the translation, but what it means is like the third fault is that, okay, it's difficult to get things. They don't last long, but at least if they really satisfied your mind, you'd be okay, right? But the thing is, pleasures in samsara, they're difficult to get. They don't last long. They easily disintegrate, but they're not fundamentally satisfying. So rather they just lead you into wanting more and more and more, and there's no real like fundamental satisfaction. So that's what in the Tibetan it comes across well, but in the English, seeking samsaric pleasures is the door. That's why it says seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering. You're seeking them again and again because they're uncertain and they can't be relied upon. That's the yeah. And then the fourth one, wompa mepa, chokche mepa, and then chokche mepa is subana. And then the fourth fault, so this is mentioned in the Jataka tales, is the fourth fault after they're not fundamentally satisfying, is that also they don't bring peace to the mind. You know, if they brought some peace, like stable peace and happiness to the mind, that'd be good, but they don't. Like even when you get the things that you want and then they disintegrate, it disturbs the body and mind. Like that the body and mind remain kind of agitated and mixed up. It's like when you get the things you want, they don't bring like a fundamental peace and happiness to the mind.
타디니 라니 세술 동안 지신 맞은 로 군제 딘로 통년 로드 체르여 상주 신용 좀 신지로서의 신제비 취지지 지고 침비랑제 림바디순 다 신제네 신자 제전 수련낭 송의 공범면의 전념을 레버톤이 제세 동바다 전부 잡이로 신실로 디네 신제네 주발라다 신배 파신의 손디 신바 수련 제바 전주 파신 안디 워디라 로베유了因为是阳的整个促进就为新年劳动是牛肚鸡了但是新几年发现住了来他不都他说的新年的劳动了来送多但罗贝鱼了罗贝鱼是了你看到底南印的国吧当生活节鱼的了罗贝鱼是了我了他的但的一罗贝鱼是的但的신지 로규 딘델 고고 말에 간들 맞아 나이다 신화지의 유익소다 나이다 시워 단대 유간데 스톤다 양면 가수지를 신화인데 이 루기 지디 용거를 양면 고바지 용거를 세상 딘데 이 신고지의 유디레스 유 신고지의 유 기술제들의 생인원이 파 도버제네 도버제의 신행기 지고를 센스지드 네버디 다 유럽에 수신의绝对的拉动机构了现在娱乐自己的네바다娱乐养大和出行的绝对以结果的主攻送的这一些拉送这个定义在娱乐机构信息了所以네바张给这个嘛네바自己不一呢养大被传统图嘛养大被传统图被写了基本这个嘛的自己的네바机构的里面呢写了个牛巴的被卡说的신바디 용고 말아 세상 신라 송지기 랑주를 지고 신지로 수스 어디 신제네 주발을 수지 송고
Sinkibe.
신제네 주발을
Simkene and Zopa. So then the next two verses say, yeah, just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all mother migratory beings. Please bless me to see this, train in supreme bodhicitta, and bear the responsibility of freeing transmigratory beings. Even if I develop only bodhicitta, but I don't practice the three types of morality, I will not achieve enlightenment. With my clear recognition of this, please bless me to practice the bodhisattva vows with great energy. So this is the beginning of the section on training in the path of the greater capable beings, or the great scope. So the first verse there is talking about bodhicitta, developing the attitude of bodhicitta towards all sentient beings. And then the second verse there, even if I develop only bodhicitta, but I don't practice three types of morality, is talking about once we develop that attitude of bodhicitta, then the kind of behavior we need to engage in, or the kind of training that we need to engage in order actually to progress towards enlightenment and to benefit all sentient beings. So that behavior of a bodhisattva can be subsumed into the six perfections, right? The perfection of generosity, perfection of morality, perfection of patience, perfection of joyous effort, perfection of concentration, and the perfection of wisdom, right? But primarily, the most important are the last two, right? The perfection of meditative concentration and the perfection of wisdom. And that's what it goes on to elaborate on in the next verse, where it says, once I have pacified distractions to wrong objects and correctly analyzed the meaning of reality, please bless me to generate quickly within my mind stream the unified path of calm abiding. So there it's making the prayer to be able to generate this unified path, a path which is a combination of, or a union of, calm abiding and special insight. So in the first line, when it says, once I have pacified distractions to wrong objects, it's not just talking about any type of wrong objects there. It's primarily talking about objects which give rise to laxity and excitement, right? The two main obstacles to generating single point of concentration and thereby calm abiding are laxity and excitement. So whatever object we engage in, generally, if we don't train, then they either give rise to excitement and attachment, or to a kind of a mind that's sinking down, it's too sinking and laxity. So it's only by gradually eliminating laxity and excitement that we can generate, a well-focused mind. And then by developing that, generate calm abiding. But just a well-focused mind alone, it won't be an antidote to the afflictive emotions and the root of samsara. We also need wisdom, realizing reality as it is, but also just wisdom alone without stability to be able to focus on the understanding of the profound nature of things, then that wisdom alone won't be able to like come to full fruition and be able to cut the root of samsara. So that's why we need a union of calm abiding, a mind which is very focused, and wisdom which understands things accurately as they are. And so that's what it's praying, is to be able to generate this special insight. It's called, it's a perfect union of calm abiding and wisdom.
他就我的了，在土木浪上，基本送去浪姐这边，浪姐这边给多把的住了，几差用的讲了，土木浪上我都去过呢，你都去过呢，土木也浪就住江年，上岸去你都去过了。아니 디버 공주 추, 나 디버 공주 추스 나온 네가 나 가서 배나 니 되게 디버 랑제 상주스 비 디버 진짜 여러 상제 중디 되게 숨비 디버 망고 요리 디베지 법이라 뭐 디나니 비 디버 나니 디버 추도 주버디 상가 두지 디버 차리 상가 두지 디버 디 간스는 상제지 고방 투버시 얘기 터망디 싸워요 그래서 디 차리 디버 공주 추도 주버래서 딘제기 두지 디버 두지 디버 디라 아니 주비 겨우다 때문에 강사나지 딜은 주용 디가나 주비 구디 가르스러디 왕디 차디 거다 왕 쉬지지네 상하기 랑라 딜라던 유튜브 시지러도 수 상하 랑스러 고르베 상하기 주구디 왕 차디 그래서 왕 쉬스러디가나 왕 제나로 예버 상진这个 말에 왕기 전다의 보다 최네 딜러 이제 매번 띵부지 고고로 해서 띵제기 돈이 상하가 유튜브 신지러도 수
So then the next verse is saying, having become a pure vessel by training in the general path, please bless me to enter the holy gateway of the fortunate ones, the supreme Vajra vehicle. So here's a prayer to, having trained well in the path of sutra, to be able to enter the supreme path of tantra. So in general, the Buddha taught many different vehicles. There's a vehicle of hearers, the vehicle of solitary realizers, the vehicle of bodhisattvas, and then within that, the vehicle of secret mantra. So the Buddha taught many different vehicles for different types of persons. So here it's praying that for those, and then so the vehicle of secret mantra is called supreme because it's the most profound method to achieve enlightenment. So here it's praying that once I become a suitable vessel, in order to be able to practice the vehicle of secret mantra, then may I be able to enter that. Having become a pure vessel by training the general path, please bless me to enter the holy gateway of the fortunate ones. So what is the entrance of the vehicle of secret mantra is to realize and to receive initiation, right? Receiving an initiation is the entrance, but just being present when an initiation is given is not enough. One has to understand the meaning of an initiation and internalize that and actually kind of experience the initiation. So that's what it's saying when it says, please bless me to enter the holy gateway of the fortunate ones, the supreme Vajra vehicle.
他忘了九年，忘虚节些上岸给浪头九年，第三我主那年做呗，我主那年是那全部给我主的，全给我主你，我主那年做呗西的，让他当时东北送我了，专门没别你问你今年说的对的送我信息了，他当时东北送下的了，我主做呗，早的当时东北引不了，呗，你把那边打不你去的。 당시 동바도 매버 있는 우주 토역이 시다고 사시다고 매버 사시면은 딜레 뉴 가서 그래 지신항체 미두지에 대해서 요마로 하셔서 당시 동바 송화디 우주 토베 싸웠다고지를 싸웠다고지 인버딜은 이번이네 아니 당시 동바세디 소당시 진이 송도버지 아니 신기로도 수스 디네 당시 동바 송바 장진 되어 말해서 송베 디네 주디니비 주딘 인부신이지 내나지 돈이 좀 내지 줘라 줘도 미고 당배 송주 주버시니까 당시 동바가 내내 아니 랑신번이지 내주 공고 어디야배 니머지를 튠시시 공지지네 가서 그래 튠시시 공지지네 랑게 도바디제 제디 주라 배 조버지버 신실로도 수유서 어디 송도
So then the next verse is, at the time, the basis of accomplishing the two attainments is, so at that time, the basis of accomplishing the two attainments is keeping pure vows and samaya. As I have become firmly convinced of this, please bless me to protect these vows and pledges like my life. So then even just taking or receiving an initiation well is not enough. Having received an initiation, then in order to so at that time of having received an initiation, then the basis of generating the two attainments. So here the two attainments are worldly attainments and then supreme attainments, which means full enlightenment. So at that time, the basis of accomplishing the two attainments is keeping pure vows and samaya, right? So the main thing is having received initiation, one has to keep the vows and the samayas that come with having received that initiation. So keeping those vows and samayas then is the basis upon which we were able to gradually generate realizations, to develop realizations in our continuum. So that's the very basis. And we have to generate certainty about that. We have to understand like why that is and be certain of that. And therefore, and thereby independence upon that certainty, then be very careful to protect those vows and pledges, to keep those vows and samayas or pledges, like our life. So to be as careful with them and protecting them as carefully as we would our life. So that's what it's praying, to be able to generate that kind of certainty about the importance of keeping vows and pledges because they're the basis for generating realizations and therefore protect them as we would our life. Please bless me to protect these vows and pledges like my life. And then the next verse says, then having realized the importance of the two stages, the essence of the Vajrayana, by practicing with great energy, never giving up the 4 sessions, please bless me to realize the teachings of the Holy Guru. So not only is it important to have certainty and therefore about the importance of the vows and pledges and therefore protect them, but we also need to practice on a daily basis, to practice in 4 sessions, meditating on the path of Tantra and therefore thereby gradually generate realizations.
但今年顶这一辈人用做个娘哩，切不了，看开起么吃过是呢？就是人生对没心里的，随时周围做那小，估计小位点的开起么吃过的，估计小位嘛的呢，人用做娘哩接的，用途嘛咯，人嘛的跟着学生们，你去住的做面呢，用途嘛，点的，可能估计小位点不到，然后可能估计小位点不上你这个嘛的，去娘哩接不了，是的，人就把都觉得做你我希望的没为呢，把这个希望的觉得去娘哩接然后么多先生，是的，人给是一把切谁的修罗人给进去，如果了把切切人给进的苏嘛丢了苏吧的，你的嘛不愿意，我今天把这当天你我希望信息老的属于，你今天。身体了，今天用不上去，当个要嘛的，就我广东呗，就我你吃了汤节都，今天就，长谷的刚才就我广东养大浪嘛的，这边去别了，弄决心去了，谈的那些去学的呀，这我这今天给我长谷的土呀的，啥的浪就原地时候做呢，都就想往多学习。
So then the next verse says, like that, may the gurus who show the noble path and the spiritual friends who practice it have long lives. Please bless me to pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. So like that, to be able to practice the path like that, then we need the external conditions of a guru who's able to show us the path, and also spiritual friends who practice, and also spiritual friends to practice in common with, right? To support us in the practice. And so therefore, we make a prayer that they have stable lives, that they have long lives, and we can remain long connected with them. Yeah. And then also, it's not enough that we have a teacher and have helpful spiritual friends, but both ourselves and they also, we need to be free from obstacles. So there's 2 different kinds of obstacles. External obstacles and then internal or hindrances, it says here, all outer and inner hindrances. So there's outer hindrances and inner hindrances. Outer hindrances are something like, in the environment that we're in, there's some like natural disasters or people or like spirit harm or other people who create obstacles to the practice. And then there's also inner hindrances, like, oneself getting sickness, becoming sick or losing enthusiasm or whatever. So, in order to generate realizations on the path, we and both our spiritual friends need to be free from both outer and inner hindrances. And then it goes on, in all my lives, never separated from perfect gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma. By completing the qualities of the grounds and paths, may I quickly attain the state of Rajadhara. So also it's not enough just to practice in one life. In one lifetime, we can only do so much. So we need to make make prayers to be able to continuously practice and meet supportive conditions for practice from life to life. So that's what it's praying in the last. And thereby, by practicing through many lives, then may we gradually achieve the highest realization, the state of Vajradhara. So now if you have some questions, I'd be happy to answer. Yes.
Can I ask a question from the introduction that you gave about it?
Sure, anything.
There was an example that having friends also at times is a bit burdening because of their expectations. But what about the relationship where you are the object of attraction, like in a relationship or maybe with parents, more with that? And how do you deal with their expectations, because usually that will never end from their side?
Right. So Rinpoche modro le dene ku tiwa chi chona. Ane kongi Rinpoche ki peji shane sosu ki chopo yona yang di kanga mendawa yongi doas. Yini yan di kaya sana ngaso chopo le mikpe chakpa yona ngaso ki samla yang kanga yongi doas. Yini yan rani le mikpe chopo ki gyula yana pama ki gyula chakpa yona. Ane ngaso yang kanga chi yongi doas. Kaya sana parape ganza ki chapa la ngaso tsimtuk maris. And the young the also Gigi Chapang on the Mabels Maris, and the Kanadi kind of set together.
Then not so yet wearing an answer Susu Yajetunator. The mission that is somebody as on your don't have it beyond our control. Check him, but in a young Kunzola, Casuramanso, Tisunis again like Nashi, again like Sumansula. Teaching loaded to do Langa Yanda were doing it. Your shit, they explain the shit in the journey. Could you sound in Angola and do about a control check, Taushi to Shibber check, Juyagi, Jans, Google in the Jonah, Google the PC down in the Shijab. The manner beyond our control.
Yeah. Right. So in general, we have to primarily focus on what we can do with our own minds to maintain our own like peace and happiness. What's going on in other people's minds, is beyond our control, right? We can't change how other people think, or look at things easily. Although sometimes opportunities arise. So just like when a teacher is like teaching a student how to draw something, and then they make an example and then show the student, and then the student learns from that. Sometimes opportunities arise where we might be able to explain, the faults of attachment and how to reduce one's attachment and so forth. So if such an opportunity arises, we should try to take advantage of it, and maybe that way we can help. But if no such opportunity arises, then it's very difficult, to change what's going on in someone else's mind, and we need to primarily focus on our own mind. Yes. Yes, you in the front row. Yeah.
What can we do in order to reduce the attachment to what other people think about us, especially from a place of a teacher or someone who people look up to?
Kapkapla ngaso susu gegen yora. Yana ngaso mi shambala pedasa robs da yora. Ene consular mikbe changpa di yora. And di roba changpa ngaso samla di go number jeba di tension kan yos. Sosuki, you mean attachment to gegen dan pedasa yora. And konsuki ngaso le dadu ngaso kapkapla joba kashi yabu tongdus, joba kashi yabu mayima tongdus. And then ngaso rewaji gyagido, o konsu ngala yabu tongagi di chapaji yora, rewa gyagido. Dila di nyundu dai ki tapshi kari yos.
Sidang 미신다게 수수 야구 통로 지나 상배랑 신기 레워지다 리그레스 이 레워레버 장지 미세기 쮸스키 마레스 딜리고르 디길레 추고르 게머 다 이나야 레워지부 지하고 있는다 가디는 레워디 지한 데버 이나 딘당겨 말 미신다게 수수 야구 통야기 주진 조디 가레스나 수수 야구치들 수수 보다보다 야구치 부다보다 야구치네 수수 야구치에 군소를 통주에 드리다. 디제는 군소 야구 통에 이해바라 지당 지ner다. 미세기 내당 가시에 오네 대스미로 용는 것도 지당 지나 수수 제투버디 나랑수 수수기 제투버디 수수 야부 제들 다기라에 수수 야제 미신다기 카르통만 독세디 미신다기 프랑기 랭게리 나 싫어지요 이내야 수수 야부 후다바다 제나 수수 야부 통이 만도 거
So in general, you know, for people we look up to and teachers, if I mean, being concerned about whether they see that we're doing something good or not good is okay. You know, that's natural, right? In general, that's not a problem. But the problem is if it becomes like too much, and that's all we think about is pleasing the teacher. So, you know, people we look up to are teachers. If they see something good in us, it's because we're doing something well. Right? So, but our focus should not be so much on what they think about us, but on trying to do our best, just trying to do well, whatever it is, you know, that we're doing, right? Their kind of approval is meant to be a support for us to do whatever we're doing well, but it becomes only a problem if we become kind of obsessed with their approval rather than focusing on just doing well what we should be doing, right? So mainly we should be focusing on whatever we're trying to do, just to do it to the best of our ability, and therefore be one's own judge and be one's own critic. Take measure of oneself for oneself without relying too much on what other people think about us. You know, what other people think about us is beyond our control. If we know for ourselves that we're doing the best we can, then that should be good enough. You know, regardless of what other people think about us, right?
比较难做了，最了开不塞的，给什么最多，最了开不塞的，你们家了，帮过你姐的，帮过你的，你个帮过一不起来，根本那前几年，卡拉龙个多了，的帮过去的，根本把卡拉满帮被工的了，龙个起多，根本把卡拉多满才被工的了，卡拉只远没得家去，卡拉啥样么子？ 아니 신다디 김님버기 셀라 최차이 뒤쪽의 시지지네 그 뒤고제니 다 김님버 사차요래 지네 그 사차비 지르는 거지 그 칼라 빼 자지라고 그래 그래서 디 가인스나 그 칼라 롱야디 롱가르에디 디가 만지버게 말이 다 가와 두디스 뒤쪽 다다마 그래서 미신다기 되라 되네 신다라 가서 야부 통주에라야 가디에는 미딘 되라 되네 이부이지 말이 뒤쪽에 개와 시험에디 다 딜라소바다 mambola 다고
So in general, like whatever we're doing, the timing is important, right? Timing is important. So for example, there's a story that a long time ago in India, there were two beggars. And you know, they're both beggars, and they went to a monastery to beg for food. But one of the beggars approached the monastery to beg for food before the sangha had been served, before the monks and nuns had been served. So generally, you know, in monasteries, before the monks and nuns have been served, then nobody else gets food, right? So then that beggar didn't get any food. He walked away empty-handed. But the second beggar waited till after the monks and nuns of the monastery had been served food, thinking, well, once they give food to the monks and nuns, then maybe they'll give me some. So then he approached after the monks and nuns had been served, and then he got, you know, a bunch of food. So he came away, you know, kind of, with a full stomach. So like that, I mean, they're both beggars. They're both begging for food from the same monastery, but the only difference is the timing, right? So like that, when we're doing something, then, you know, if we want approval from others, in general, that's okay, but it's not okay. I mean, it becomes a problem if that's all we want all the time, right? There's an appropriate time to look for approval from others. Yes, there's this gentleman in the back, and then I'll come to this side. This gentleman in the back. Yeah.
When Buddha got the enlightenment, he helped all the sentient beings to the path of enlightenment. He has, like, there is no karma debt, only good merit is there. So my question is, what happens next? How can we come out of this cyclic process of 6 realms? Who made this process? Who takes the accountability of this process? Like the highest realm is the God realm. When someone got the enlightenment, he will help all sentient beings to the path of enlightenment. What happens next after that? Do we come out of this cyclic process? Can we break this and come out of it after doing everything the right way?
Alvin, I missed the middle part of your question. So you were saying when the Buddha got enlightenment, then he helped all sentient beings
The path of enlightenment.
to the path of enlightenment, and then?
So what happens next after that?
What happens next?
How can we break the cyclic process of 6 realms, like animal realm,
Yeah.
human, and
When the highest state is the God realm.
yeah, when the highest is the God realm, and we have all the sentient beings towards the path of enlightenment, what happens next?
Okay,
Can we break this cyclic process?
sure.
Who made this process? Is anyone accountable for this?
Okay, that's a separate question, but yeah, I'll ask both. Yeah. 저는 문두 샤케토바기 상게네스 and it's simpson 탐지 상 고방가 티볼 넘버스 and 저랑 디 고방 톱쇼 디 라이 고방데스 and 디 젤라 디 카리레스 상게기 simpson 탐지 더 상게 고방 티볼 넘네 and 라이 고방 톱네 디 젤라 카리레스 저랑 코알레 데베 고방 여레베스 and di tiwa tambo. Tiwa nipadi 저런 코어디 술을 서버렸어. 니바래.
나 당부디 뒤로 상제히 공항세디 가르레스 디 고어디 뭐지 상제세디 디스 아주 신주지捐탄지 상사바 다사바 제세디 신딩기 연된탄지 용수 제바 너는 捐堂节捐几日堂节升级捐几日堂节是升级原定的恰堂节用做吧东年堂节定的些吧东年给早些是东年些吧听这个定的些古邦节了听这个古邦节了上节是我的是但第托三年开始那我的讲了第托差别节了但东年定的些古邦的但古邦他多不的但第了那边古邦第了托节没吧第了托节原有嘛东年定的些原定堂节用做差不多但今年프랑기 상제기 칠레 제바 생진기 된제야라 소바 딘데기베 가수레 취지 꾸레 요메신도스 다 시디타도바라니 시디타도바라니 전군세 연대군이 공한된데실니 다 야슈디가 내디 오라 디제다 아니 신물의 뒤디 주베 수지구이 넘버되는 신진기 된제데 코 마동기 봐도 뒤탕제 대신에 휴그레스 이치지 아이스는 라문에捐탄제 세우다捐유서를 많이 용마로 용마로 디 용사를 용사마를 디상 병부지 케베이나 병부디 구자네 마산에 보야게 되버지기도 병부지 케베이나 그런 구자가 대야마도 막 보야게 더시 지금도 아 디이시
마도 생각만은
어디 그럼 병부지
bomba지
병부 케베이나 베나 아리슨지 포트루니 신신 케베이나 티마 당부지 티마 숨바지 티마 니바지 티마 숨바 라이는 양조이 랑그도 야라야 병부기 구자가 대마도 막 보야기 막 봐봤어
마바야기
막 보야기 상부 당기도
당면
그래서 병부지네 무퇴니 제기 저자기도 상제 고방에 대해서는 막 가봐 버려 말해 디제 코어디 스위치버선 코어 진행이 가랑 소리스다 가랑 소리스
마리는 코어디 거기 코어 가원이 중원에서 근데 수기서에서 근데 루미식
소리스
나서서 나서서
이거 통화요 그랬어 통화요 뒤쪽에 장기 리미티드 요 말해 unlimited before
그래요
no start
no start right. So the first, in response to the first question, first it's important to understand what is a Buddha, what an enlightened being is. So, I mean, in Tibetan, Sangye. So the first syllable, Sang, means, that one has eliminated all faults, that one has purified or eliminated all faults, primarily faults of the mind. So Buddha is, on the one hand, is someone who has eliminated all faults of the mind, all mistaken aspects or all obscurations in the mind. And then the second part, Sangye, the second syllable, ge, this is in Tibetan, it means to have fully developed all positive qualities of the mind, like compassion and wisdom and so forth. So a Buddha is not only someone who's eliminated all faults of the mind, but also someone who has fully developed all positive qualities, all the positive potential of the mind to its utmost extent, to its greatest possible extent. So therefore, once one has, eliminated every fault and fully developed every positive quality, there is no higher possible state than that. So it's not possible to achieve a higher state than that. So, but what a person does after they become enlightened is try to benefit other sentient beings. Because there's other sentient beings who, are still suffering and still have many problems and haven't fully developed their own positive potential, like us. So then what a Buddha does is, for their own welfare, they don't need to do anything more. But in order to benefit others, they appear. They deliberately manifest different appearances, like in different forms, to teach and to benefit sentient beings. Right? So that's what a Buddha does. And there's no falling back from that state of full enlightenment. It's not like and of course, a Buddha doesn't want to fall back to any lower state. Just like someone who achieves the state of a very high state in society, like I don't know, a CEO or a president of the United States or something. Once they achieve that state, they want to stay there as long as possible. They don't want to come down. But a Buddha, not only they don't want to fall from that state, but it's impossible to fall from that state, right? So what they do is to continually appear in different ways within samsara to benefit sentient beings. And then in response to the second question, where does samsara come from, or who creates samsara? It's we ordinary beings, we create our own samsara. So samsara comes from us. And samsara is not something that in the past it didn't exist and then it came into existence. It's something that is beginningless and it's continued to exist until now for us. So although this world system that we live in, like planet Earth and the solar system and this universe, this has a beginning, right? This has arisen and exists till now. But before this universe existed, there was another universe. Before that, another one, and before that, another one without a beginning. Yes, and then I'll go over this one. Yeah.
A lot of the teachings, when the teachers in general, they make things in the mind are very obscure breakdowns, very restful things, and it's very beautiful. But I feel like some of them gain a lot of power from the view that we live in cyclic existence and rebirth and reincarnation. Coming from my world, it's really hard to grasp, and I want to hear something that gives a little bit more feeling for it. There's fact or for me concept.
Right. Well, let me just make sure I understand your question. So you're saying a lot of teachers, they take kind of broad concepts and break them down into much more manageable or bite-sized pieces, which is helpful. But then something about they get a lot of power from the view of cyclic existence, that we live in cyclic existence. And
like some teachings, I could be able to see it from that view, they would be more impact on us.
know. So you have some doubt about whether cyclic existence is a real thing or not. Like, how do we know that that's true? Yeah. Okay. Kongi chira number sangi be gegen dan joshi gyaptang di kecho jigla chira ngaso di tumon be mi nyamnyong des cuz ship trashing chamo joshi gyagi be 탑 개발진지 요래스 얘네양 망체와기 나서 고원하고 콜 대버 여버 시샤기라 and 공기 the dana the 이지제 요메스 되는 요말레스 and 나서 코어나고 여발라 and 간데스 the using 카리어스 간데스 이지제야디 케레스 가서 그래
코어는 요메스에디 간들 남배기 코세디 사자순도 지라 유명하게 시고 말해. 상류 나로로 녀모여나 지당 지에 있는다. 수수 녀모배 신왕도 주리에나. 뭐 배는 되샤지의 유지동은 되샤지. 되샤지번하신 아니 되샤기 신왕도 주네. 되배 신왕도 주네. 되샤지번하신 게 내가지. 디원이 내가지데. 디를 녀모배 신왕도 주어서 그거 다랑의 코스. 근데지 이내당 올려는 코 봤어.
So samsara is not like a place that we're in or something like that. It's important to know understand like what we mean by samsara. So samsara is not a place that we're in, but rather it's a state of mind, a state of being, whereby our mind is under the control of afflictive emotions. So like involuntarily, for example, like attachment arises. And then sort of without us having control over attachment, we're like compelled to just follow in the kind of behavior that our own attachment sort of dictates to us in a way. So in a way, it's like as long as our own behavior is under the powerful influence of afflictive emotions, then that's samsara. That's what samsara is when your mind is under the control of disturbing emotions that arise, like attachment. Then yeah, that is basically what samsara is. So that, yeah. Follow-up question? It looks like it. Go down to the two.
I was quite referring to the fact that how can I imagine like rebirth and reincarnation to take place? I mean, it's just not in my mind.
Well, not really. 공기 강요디 기억나지 요바. 기억나지 요바 간데스디 도트게스.
지원하시 유버디 다 렐하시 슬라우 있는데 구디 딱 렐하고세디 구디시 디슈제 구디슈 임버장도 마세베 디 내가 지금 지한 도 메시지 지원하면 지금
동시 담모디 우디죠.
구디슈
아니 코데시
understand 구디슈 로스 다 지린데 또 저러지 세상 지원하면 지금 용도 부준요 나오다 어디 지원하면 여기 다 생기거든
So I mean, in general, so there's different ways to establish the existence of past and future lives, right? But probably the most easy to understand and perhaps the most convincing is the phenomena of very young children who remember previous lives. You know? That's probably the best, you know, if you want to look for evidence, that's the best place to look. And an easy way to understand how to establish the existence of past and future lives is to look at, you know, the evidence of young children who have memories of past lives.
야 남배 쇼나 주생 망고 송요리 되는 주생지 디송요리 신디라 파메기 소바 파메기 부디라 주주 당年로제 자년 조와 당바 딘데 많이 버체 genlage 산에 장바에 딘데 많이 버체 부준용니 루지니 거네 부카시기 생기 바 가서 공시디 하장기 닌지 공시 수시 뭐 여디 봐 생진을서 가시비 하장기 배 싫어 일본 농부 여디 봐 가시비 하장기 가서 우리야 공부 참 주도 부준용 내려지 부주 아메 말하바 genlage 말 랑신기 시가를 딘데 시와 정도 디 생각하기 공배왕기레스
Then another kind of evidence is to look for how different children have very different disposition and characters. Apart from anything their mother and father taught them or any teacher taught them, you can see how different children, they have very different character. Some children from when they're very young, they're naturally like very subdued and very compassionate, and they never harm any sentient beings. They're just very kind and compassionate towards any sentient beings they see. And some children, they have very sharp minds and very sharp intellect. Apart from anything their mother and father taught them or any teacher taught them, it's just like, it seems to be a natural part of their character. They have this very sharp intellect. Or other children also, they're very, what do you say, kind of angry and upset, and they like to harm sentient beings, and they just have a very kind of rough character. So that seems to be like evidence of past lives, in short.
내 주체망부 요르스지만 주체에는 가서 못 틀림시.
And then, Rinpoche had said at first, in general, there are many reasonings in Buddhist philosophy for the existence of past and future lives. There's other reasonings, but now we don't have so much time to go through. Yeah. Then in the back, and then this gentleman here. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you for your time and wisdom. And my question is, when you experience attachment for another person, like lust, and you are able to control it, but then you have a dream about them, and then the next morning you feel like you can't control it anymore. Do you deal with that in the same way that you deal with it in the beginning? Because it's almost subconscious. You didn't like have this, you had it in a dream, it wasn't controlled. So it wasn't conscious thought. But do you deal with that differently?
Sure. 저랑 가서 미션발을 잡아요나. And then mix of concept because the trickster 제발 믹배 잡아줘봐요나. 미선처럼 잡아요나. And 저랑 전번에 데스 삼로 도르제 두 번째. 이런 디젤라 양 밀람기 값수 양 concept 딜 믹배 잡아주나. And then 쇼케네 대양 잡아디 칸데스 소소 완전 제투기리스. 디 칸센 처럼 단번에 소수 그래서 샘 무드기 무규리 요바. 이니 밀람 주나양 디 발레나디 양 요바 차송스. And 디 완전 제기 탑 맨라와 여러베스.
다디 디리 나랑수 레 담보 버스라고 있는데 다다 나랑수 거베 신진 수지 탐해봐 단대 나랑수 내당 쪽으로 딜라 시 미진 되샤지에 미진 집에 가도 딜라 되샤지에 디 상신 다부시다 좋아 다디 되샤지버 쿠랑랑기 다치라베 독자식으로 취량의 연구 말해서 디잔스 원다 되샤잔 지에면 취량의 제고에 요말다 사도 분한시 잡으로 디스요 다 딘데 인상 취량의 제고서 시루기 미진지 돈에 되샤지에 이유가 서로 공부를 kiến 레벨에 있는 공부 사야 요바 인상 아주 취지고로 다 취량의 제고로 세상 뒤준도 되샤가 니부 땡지지네 되샤기 준 되샤기 니부공 되레진 되샤 쇼충으로 동양의 공시니 뒤준도 공시딘 잡을 세바이나 아니 되샤디 칼리칼리 쇼충 줘야디 제르마도 니마지 나로라 가서 파스포트 시바나시 파스포트 제사선 다 젠지사로 디데스로 요 말이스
So first of all, like in general, when we're dealing with like attachment, for instance, of course, it's just human nature when we see someone we're attracted to give rise to attachment, right? That naturally happens, no? So we can't think, even if we want to practice Dharma, it's unrealistic to think right from the beginning that as soon as I see an object which causes attachment to arise in me, that I'm just going to stop the attachment and get rid of it. Because that's just the denial of our situation. For us, attachment is like the earth and sky, it's everywhere, right? So rather than having the unrealistic expectation that we can just stop it in one day, we need to continually and gradually practice by thinking about the faults of attachment and the benefits of being free from attachment, right? So by applying the antidotes. So by thinking about the faults of attachment and then the different antidotes to attachment, and then continually and gradually applying those, then gradually attachment becomes less and less and less over a long time. It's not a matter of just stopping it in one day when we see attachment arise. Like, just like when you go to another country, you just have to show your passport at one time and that's it, and then you're in. It's not like that.
상도의 디리 되샤 되바디 지용구로 다 되샤 지용구도 되샤 유스 되바 유스 지지네 되바 여바 짱 주센데 제네 내가 지기 되버이나 다디 주진 양다고 여바 차도 말이다 년 되기도 쓰어라 나순 되바딜라잔 타요만 나순 되바디베 신앙사고요 킨사고들이 수수 다우 상무 짬에 소액인 되바딘데 리고 상상 나서 근데 제게 용바로 수수 민되가 상무 세야 되네 세상 되발레기를 된 되발레베 지라 아이 강아 쉬어나시 되샤레기 돈 되바 연구도 세시네 랑상 디짱기 주세를 되는 제디 많이 버제 되발레베 랑상 되었다니 되바나신디 제나 풀어 수수라 펜도치오 연구도 가서 닝가치오 연구도 가리 연구도 뿌리불라 마음발라 타림불라 펜버디 마운드에 네버디 마운드에 갈상지다 되발레베는 되바나시 제나 룽긴도 멘도 지다디 롱그르 롱만 지기를 말이 지다. 아니 되바나시 제바 있나 수수다. 닌가 가려 그래 말이 지상다. 되발레바나시 제나 수수다. 아니 미신다 니가라 펜버디 슈지요 요레베. 야 녀버디 슈지요 요레 싫어 비지다네 싫어 지스다. 되바디 싫어기 강조지네. 아니 치바이나 내가 제바이나 또 딜라 되차 까도스. 근데 지금 되차 강조지도스.
So in general, having a desire to do something is fine. We have all different kind of desires to do different things, or desire for different things. And then within that, we have attachment. But just having a desire to do something is not a good reason to do that. No, we have all different kind of desires to do some things, and like to do some things or to get rid of other things. Like some people, like sometimes we have the desire to just for some people, the desire like to kill people or to get rid of a bunch of people, arises. But just because that desire arises is not a valid reason to do that, right? So just having a desire to do something is not a valid reason to do anything. So just like I was mentioning earlier, when we see a desire for an object or desire to do something arise, in the next moment, we need to use discrimination to see, is it wise to follow that desire or not? If I follow that desire, then what are the long-term effects going to be? In the long term, if I follow what that desire is kind of drawing me to do, in the long term, is there going to be more benefit or more harm? Right? So is it suitable to do that kind of action, or is it not suitable? Is it suitable? Is it something good for me and the other person, or not so good for me? Is it going to bring more harm to me and the other person, or is it going to bring more benefit to me and the other person? So in short, we need to use this kind of wisdom, discriminating wisdom, which investigates that, the object of desire and the kind of course of action that the desire is drawing us towards, and think in a more broad way, both in terms of what's beneficial or harmful for ourselves, for the other person, and also in the long term. So it's by using that kind of wisdom mind that's what enables us to control and reduce the desire.
Sometimes you can logic agrees to have these thoughts. You can have a dream, and then everything just goes out the window, and your feelings come in. It's like, how do you deal with that in the same way? Or is there a different way to approach like the feelings that you can't control?
When didn't the shipshejena, the social similar dana, the shut up the dana, the social the kapkal the similar dana, the digide, kapkal the ransom to yan docha, the Binglamena, the social seminal, the younger.
용그래.
이 kind of sticker.
디 이제 디 용번나신 디 가서 그래. 제외는 ninga 디안냥도 요요바레스. ninga 제안냥도 요요바레스. 그래서 디 뇌샤 로부터 지네 뇌바 로부터 지네 디기 뇌바 나신지 가드에는 제쇼야 디 마용야기 더시디 다이 공부가 나신 뒤준도 중다 practice 뒤준도 practice 매워이나 아니 가서 되샤 레슨은 카드 자에게 누버디요 뒤준도 인신부 돈에 중들디 practice 되어이나 이네 되샤 레버이나 카드 자에게 누버디리그리 그래서 수부 중다제다 당부 쉬어요 말로 가서 공부 당부게 요말 쉬어요 말에 但你们就老你先去
Yeah, so in short, the Rinpoche is saying you need to practice. So at first, maybe, Rinpoche was saying earlier, for ordinary beings like us, it's difficult at the beginning, because we don't have much training. Just like if we're practicing Kung Fu, when we're first practicing, we don't have very much power or skill, so we're not good at it, But if we practice again and again and again, we gain more skill, we gain more strength, and then gradually we can really accomplish something that earlier we never imagined we could. So it's also like that with training your wisdom. right? And training your ability to control your desire and your other afflictions. At first, yeah, it's like when we see attachment arise and then just try to use the wisdom and discriminating analysis, like Rinpoche is explaining. Yeah, it's not going to just get rid of it like that, but we have to try again and again and again. And then gradually we become more and more skilled at thinking more clearly and more realistically and gaining more and more control over our desire. And then gradually, the wisdom is much stronger, and we can, as soon as desire arises, we can decide how we want to react to it.
Dreams having people not actually pray, you haven't trained enough.
And Kongidina Shin Milam Jumola Kansana Perishara Gitole, Chomai Chemo.
Milang di ki mare. Nge la nime gong la jong dati shu chimbu tewe na milang jo ro re. Nime in the day.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, in general, whatever occupies our mind in the daytime, that's what appears in our dreams at night. Yeah. So it's not, having just a dream about it is not any special sign of especially something. Yes, this gentleman.
Last question. Sorry.
For life, the assets and material wealth that they have houses and condo market. Like an attachment that carries on to my next life or something, but like naturally I would want to give it to my wife and kids with the asset, right? But karmically, would it not be better to actually not give it to my wife or my kids and to give it to, say, the Dharma, to like a charity, to be in equanimity of like spreading the wealth to wherever the universe wants to spread it? And if that is the case, or that's the most efficient way to exhaust the karma, and I want to do that, but then my wife is in this disagreement.
She probably would be. Kongi tiyo des kebarwa. Ane kongi cherang tsediya la matso di yongcho mandra yora. Ne kamba jala dan mula soka yora. Ane chiwe kapsu desol mikbe chakpa yona. Ane kewa chima la yang di kanga yo. Ane mashi ngundu cherang matso sosu gementan puku yona. Konsola koshe gya konsola dena yaksara was. Inia yang le gyude ki tone la tana yang ben gomba la chi de kamba dango dan yonse la soba gomba dan because mi upo la soba de roba jeke desolo puna le ki tone di yaka marwas ini andus jena ane gema la yang tang ro marwa ane kar jega
Dati ro chidang inji mi jigin di le che go se tindegi ten keba ke yu jimare sula rorang goya di kasore rorang chishu gu ken su yönere di le che to na gemba se me ba nami se me ba sula rorang pe gu chimbu cha de ba ro rupu be mi kashe le mune rupu go de ne yor tindegi be rorang gu ken chishu di su cha yu di le dang to na du chishu di ngur sa le ya shu di sa to le sang to 다 디제바이나 나온 만도 세디디 나미수기 나온 그만두던 데벨로퍼 마버 디 운에 주신다 그래서 나 운에기 제고에 지는 나온 만두나게 나미기 나온 만두에 있는 센 마버버 있나래 제고에 제바이나 제고에 디 제네 구수센 판바이나 디게요 말했어 것도 이내 나미디다 지난다 저 지시 차와 인상 고란소다야 바츠 다다지 상지 당시로
So, yeah, in general, in a situation like that where you're dying and thinking where to, how to distribute your possessions to others, then the main thing to think about is not, not necessarily like a Buddhist monastery or something like that. Just put that aside, but to mainly think about who would benefit the most, who is in most need of those things, and to whom that you could give would it be the most helpful. And the most would it bring about the most benefit, right? So in general, and then within that, if you sincerely think, you consider who would it be most beneficial to give things to, and that really does seem to be the case to you, then whether other people agree with that or not, or other people approve of that or like that or not, shouldn't be a very big consideration. But on the other hand, with our family, our people who are related to our family, like your wife in this situation, or children, we do have responsibility to them, and to care about them, equitably. So we should also take that into consideration.
做了上多子党，
Right.
大起党，那恰上这个是呢，故意呢，这个就弗朗斯搞来家伙嘛西。
So we also need to, think about them and try to, what do you say? Try to provide for them. But then also, for example, our children, they need to learn to take care of themselves. They need to learn to work and sustain themselves. They can't rely totally upon us. But yeah, we should think about them equitably.
啊，所以南米的部署看对呢，送接切推要嘛的，切个对位呢切图嘛的，看对呢送接切图嘛，大多切图嘛咯。
So however much we want to, however much desire we have to take care of our, our relatives, our children in every possible way, it's impossible. We can't do everything for them. That's not possible.
Karmically, it sounds like I would be doing. I would get more karmic, like exhausted out if I gave it to people like more in the other countries.
Yeah.
Than my one kid and my wife.
Yeah. Ale kongi de leki toni sama dana tan pena ngadi kada aridal sayaji ki khamlaji yona yan aridal sayaji yona ane pena Africa la ni bu khashi khala maraken bu ra yabaje ane soso ki gemen dan bukuji yona tane khala maraken ni buku des dena ngalle des yaga sagres rabu thongi dus.
Tadi depend situation.
You understand?
It's gonna be short. But it is possible to reach enlightenment if we don't practice daily, we don't deliver ourselves to the practice. And if we just practice like for an amount of time during a period in one lifetime, then how do we keep collecting that through lifetimes, like in different lifetimes? Like how does it work? It's like karma?
I know. You're saying if it's not possible practicing in just one lifetime,
Yeah.
how is it that we can practice through many lifetimes?
Yeah.
Okay. Mogi, but sedi lalan jebol deni sange matuna, and say mambuki gune kanis lalan je tugulis.
做的单单俺让说身体了也不切的，身体了别娘呢大把的切的，单单俺说切腿的切拐的了吧，切拐的俺说单单腿的，那忙把了刚才是用个些的，假设家他们单单拉把了用个嘛的，一那样单单拉把了要嘛的，单单也不切呢，就也不啥能这不也不永远的不去你了吧，结果起码的谷歌也不去推的不去你说的家的个第几节，你呢单单南北兄给南路了。 结果基本上去年那些谷歌也不永远的切度，第一切度，别呢，俺说开始我谈到的，第几用过了，大型的结果让下给顶这个头些切送大百姓了，大百姓的些给顶这个头些没些些有了，然后结果基本今年上不了列推的切度，被叔马东被空的了，开始我的。 上了东亚，到那为你上东亚给你送多，到那路上真正嘛难路了，这样送了。但这样头些有的，做的身体了也会见呢， 지시모 야부 요인데 하나 자장 방식 디딩키고.
So our main focus, of course, needs to be on just this life, right? Just within this life, we need to practice as well as we can, do as well as we can in our practice, be a good person and try to practice, the teachings however best we can just in this life. And then that becomes a cause, right? So if we create a cause, of good practice, then 100% that will produce a result. That's just the nature of things, that you do one type of action again and again and again. And the result is that you have an opportunity to do that or you have a habituation to do that kind of action again in the future. So if we practice as the best we can in this life, then just by the nature of reality, then we'll have opportunities to continue practicing in the next life. It's not like, not like having something in our hand right now that we can be certain of it, but eventually that cause will produce a result. That is definite. And then also there's a practice like
다베 신강.
알레 다베 케보다 다베 신제 닥신 케와 용이 양 드레고지 용이
나신의 지역이 단다. 그나 가서 보아기 나는데
and then dogma. And then so in a future life, then by practicing well in this life, well, there's also specific practices we can do to like take rebirth in a pure land, for instance. There's practices called like poa, where you do a certain kind of meditative practice together with mantras and prayers to create the cause to take rebirth in the next life after death in a pure land, where you have an opportunity to practice. There's specific practice like meditations to accomplish that. That's another thing. And then there's also another set of practices called the 5 powers. Like it comes up in the Doma. So in the mind training, there's a genre of mind training teachings in Buddhism. Within that, there's something called the 5 powers, which are specific practices geared towards achieving a good rebirth in future lives and being able to continue practicing in future lives.
Please continue.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Last question.
This is the third last question.
Reason as to why existence exists, and is there a higher purpose to creation?
Okay. Yoba gyusin yobes. And chirang di karisa kan yobala di mixel the gyusin yobes.
여버스 가서 가냐 여버레스 거라디 주센스게 고고만. 그 여버니 여버로. 이 주센시에니 여버 차고 말고 냥뇽기 돈이 가자 하면서.
So, I mean, things just exist because they exist. No, there's no special reason that things exist. Through our own experience, we can see that that's the case. There's no need for like a further reason to establish that, and there isn't a further reason. It's just an object of our experience.
Just to become better.
Yeah, purpose. I'm saying purpose. Purpose and make you body, but it shouldn't use it, because using the pocket of the using the money. Been a semshiki done to accomplish the purpose of sentient beings. Kongi Mikyo Sana Kansana, Yobe Jumaki Mikyo mixer Yomari, the mixer of Kasa Dun and Dembe Kusen. The Mikyo double Yobe Kusen. But Yeshichoba Gitawa, Yeshichoba, Yeshu Mari Cholu Nane, Yeshichobe Cholu Yoram, Yeshichobe Gitawala, Cheran Chitin Gopo Koring Zambling Zoera. And call it so send knowledge Zoeki Kusen Yoram. Dinashin. Also Java Jena, also the Java JB Kusen Yorabes. Dinashin the Yoba, Kan Yoba, the Junwaki Kusen Yorabes. Purpose.
그디 디순고라 남배긴 지딩 고고 시고 말에 주던 제비 왕 땡진 대원 중 세디 주던 제비 왕기 단대 년단이 간대 정벌에서는 니마기 주요 년단이 용벌에서 배는 잠불리디 간대 차벌서 든 잠불리디 니마기 지된 강신다지 동네 디슈了 다디 토르 뒤 참무 차요로 다 디주 지대양 좀 배면 뒤지냐 잠불리디 차벌에서 두 시즌의 차 가서 동 디네양 차 디네 지 잠불리 지왕 시베이나但잠불리 디나신 잠불리 배 장문에 대봐 在你太有们几天康的才有什么
So in general, I mean, it just comes down to cause and effect. Everything, in the Buddhist view, everything is a dependent arising. Everything arises in dependence upon causes and conditions. So if you take just like this world system that we have now, like with the Earth and the solar system and the galaxies in this world system, it arose in dependence upon causes and conditions, right? But before this, there was another world system, and that when it disintegrated, and then there's just like subtle particles kind of floating around, and then in dependence upon certain causes and conditions, and they kind of coagulate and then form, planets and galaxies and so forth in this world system. Gradually, this world system also will disintegrate, and just into like there'll be like a period of stasis, of like nothingness, where there's just kind of everything's broken down into subtle particles, and then in dependence upon causes and conditions, another world system will arise, and that process has no beginning or end, right? So yeah. So now we'll just dedicate briefly. There's some brief dedication prayers on page 241. Page 241. May whatever virtues I have collected benefit the teachings and all transmigratory beings, and in particular, may it cause the essence of the perfect pure Losang Drakpa's teachings to shine forever. Sajibo Joy
See you next time.